By my clock, maybe it's a little slow. All right, 7 on the dot. All right, well, let's get started, everyone. Good evening. Welcome. I see a lot of people here. Can't imagine why. TV 79, are you ready? I assume so. I haven't heard from them. Looks good. Karen, you're good?
Yep.
All right. Welcome, everyone. This is today's Tuesday, October 22nd of 2024. It is 7 o'clock. We are in room 206 here at the Darien Town Hall. We have a public hearing tonight with 2 items on the agenda. So we're going to get right into the first item, which will be a little bit quicker to get them out of the way, and then we'll get to the main show tonight. So the first item on the agenda for our public hearing is the flood damage and prevention application number 6C as in cat, PL-24-132, Sandra Drimmel, 8 North Road. This is the proposal to construct a new 11 by 7 foot spa along the southeasterly corner of the existing single-family residence and adjacent to the existing pool, and to perform related site development activities within a regulated area. The 1.04 plus or minus acre subject property is located on the east side of North Road, approximately 360 feet northeast of its southernmost intersection with Butler's Island Road, and is shown on Assessor's Map number 67 as lot number 74 in the R1 zone. Guys, what do we got?
This is a simple application that involves installing a spa located within the impervious footprint of the existing pool patio at the rear of the house. The application was submitted in conformance with section 820 of the Darien zoning regulations under our flood damage prevention regulations. The reason the commission is seeing this tonight is because the spa is being installed in the flood zone. The application was referred out to Joe Canis of Ty and Bond. He submitted comments for the record dated today, October 21st, with no comment on the application. It was also referred out to the building department and the health department. The building department had no comments on the application. The director of health noted that the sewage disposal system on the site would need to be evaluated. Staff went out because the proposed work is within 100 feet of mean high water in coastal waters. Normally, coastal area management review would be required. However, staff went out and made the determination that no Comm review would be necessary for the installation of this spa. We issued a letter dated September 26th waiving that Comm review. The applicant's representative, Joe Sochi of JH Pool and Patio, is here this evening to answer any questions that you may have on the application.
Okay. Is Mr. Sochi here?
Yes.
Oh, please, come on.
Just remember to state your name for the record, please.
Joe Sochi, S-O-C-C-I.
Welcome. So, just to be clear, when we say spa, you're talking hot tub next to the pool, right?
Yes.
And we are not changing any type of drainage. It's not going to drain any differently, and it's obviously not going to change
All on the same footprint.
all in the same footprint. So no impervious surface is changing. No, nothing.
Correct.
Pretty basic. Okay. Pretty vanilla application.
Yeah.
So I'm going to open up to the. I don't have any further questions for you. I just wanted to clarify spa meant hot tub. I'll open it up to other members of the commission if they have anything to say. Ms. Boylanki?
Just what are your conditions around controlling the construction debris during the process since you are in the flood zone?
I gave the map, gonna put all the silt fence and the substrate in, and basically I'm going in one side, out one side. I don't see anything,
Pretty straightforward.
right, anything being disturbed.
Yeah, I mean, it looks incredibly.
Yeah. Are you planning to start this fall? if possible, if weather
Depends on
holds?
the weather.
Okay. It's not, this isn't like a pool, it's gonna take weeks and weeks, right? It's gonna be a pretty quick project, right? Okay. George?
No questions.
I'm good. Jamie? Nope. Okay. Since this is a public hearing, is there anyone from the general public that would like to speak towards this application? Seeing none? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close. George makes a motion, Jamie makes a second. All those in favor? Or nothing? Thank you.
Couple weeks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's unlikely we'll deliberate tonight, unfortunately, but we'll try and get it as quickly as possible.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yep. Sounds like there's some kind of,
Reverb.
yeah, you hear that? Oh, they went away. Okay, all right, looks like our AV technical problems have been eliminated. So now we will get to the continuation of the public hearing regarding site plan application number 312, special permit application number 340, flood damage prevention application number 448, landfilling and regrading application number 576, also known as PL-24-130, TCNE Metro Development, Inc., 11622 Thorndale Circle, and tax lot number 9, as shown on Assessor's Map number 39. This is the proposal to raise 5 existing office buildings on the subject property and construct a new residential community consisting of 5 multifamily buildings, garages, amenity areas, driveways, parking, drainage, utilities, landscaping, and to perform related site development activities within a regulated area. A total of 175 apartments are proposed. The 11.004 plus or minus acre subject property is located at the northwestern terminus of Thorndale Circle, approximately 442 feet northwest of its intersection with Boston Post Road, and consists of the following parcels located in the designated office DO, designated office multifamily residential overlay DOMR, and residential R13 zones. 1 Thorndale Circle, map number 39, lot 18, 1.958 plus or minus acres. 16 Thorndale Circle, map 39, lot 11, 2.363 plus or minus acres. 22 Thorndale Circle, map 39, lot number 17B, 4.343 plus or minus acres. And Hecker Avenue, map number 39, lot number 9, 2.34 plus or minus acres. The hearing was opened on October 1st, 2024. Gentlemen, this is our second hearing on the matter. I believe the last public hearing at the beginning of October, we heard from a number of bits about this, specifically some traffic, some site development. We know that there's been some changes to the site plan. There were some comments, we've made some revisions. So let's see, what's our current status? What do we got?
Yeah, absolutely. The commission continued the hearing from October 1st. There are a number of a number of items that remain open for the commission to consider here. Adam, you're right. The applicant presented details relative to traffic and the general site development. The first hearing, we expect the applicant to present more information this evening relative to site engineering. We also received traffic comments from the applicant earlier this week that have been forwarded to the commission's peer reviewer, Greg Del Rio of Hardesty in Hanover. Greg is not here this evening as he has not had a chance to review those comments tonight, so we expect that to be handled at a future meeting. We do have Joe Canis of Ty and Bond here this evening to review with the commission his engineering comments relative to stormwater management. And we also note that we received quite a few public comments on the application between last time, beginning of October, and this evening. Those comments, of course, have been circulated to the commission and uploaded to the application. And we would just like to note to the public this evening that If you have submitted comments for the record, the commission, of course, has had the opportunity to review those comments, and that there's no need to reiterate those comments. They are included as part of the record.
And we do expect to get to public comment tonight for those of you who do want to give comment, just as for an FYI.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Lastly, I would just say that the applicant continues to be before the Architectural Review Board. They last went before the ARB on October 15th and are expected to go back before the ARB on November 19th for revisions to their architectural plans. So again, we have Jay Klein here of Carmody Law, the applicant's representative, to continue his presentation this evening and answer any questions that the commission may have.
We also got the sewer commission, right?
Yes.
Correct, yes. The sewer commission did issue an approval. We uploaded the approval to the application.
Yep.
The sewer commission approval was actually in August.
Yeah, I think we were waiting for it, right? Or it wasn't part of the application last time?
It was a memo dated October 3rd,
Yeah,
noting that they approved it over the summer.
got it. Okay.
But the police commission hasn't submitted comments.
Correct.
Yeah.
We're waiting for the police commission as well.
So we've got, just for the record, we've got EPC, sewer,
Yeah.
waiting on police, and fire, and ARB. Fire
Yes.
we'll talk about
Yeah, I
tonight.
believe
Yeah.
that covers it.
Okay. Okay, I believe Mr. Klein is here.
Great.
Want to state your name and affiliation for the record?
Cool. Yeah, of course. My name's Jay Klein. I'm a partner at Carmody Law here on behalf of the applicant. As Fred mentioned, and I think you alluded to as well, Mr. Chairman, this proceeding is the continuation of not just a hearing that started on October 1st, but a project that many people have been working hard on, not just on our team, but in this building for the better part of a year now. And at every stage of that review process, a good project has been made better, whether it was at the EPC, whether it's in conversations with the chief of police, and whether it's before all of you here this evening and with some of our neighbors who are here tonight too. We have a full project team who's here to update you on some of the revisions that we've made since the 1st of October. First, Jay Williams will come up here and walk you through some of the general site plan changes, but also show you some of the collaboration that we've worked on with your colleagues on the ARB in terms of really enhancing the design of some of the buildings that are on, not some, all of the buildings that we're proposing for the property. Then you'll hear from our project engineer, Tom Daly, who can walk you through some of the stormwater and drainage features that were also looked at quite carefully by your colleagues on the EPC. We also have Dave Sullivan, who can drill down. Many of you asked us a couple of traffic-related details on the site, and Dave's here to follow up on some of those specific questions. And we're all here to kind of answer whatever questions that come up throughout as well. I'll mention, too, that in addition to those folks, Craig Flaherty of Redness and Mead is here to answer questions, as well as my associate, Dan Chappell. And we have Mike Adamo, Nick DeSatnik, and Aaron Levy of the development team, and Jerry Nielsen, the current owner of the property. So with that, Jay, I think you're behind the screen. I'll ask you to come up here and get things started.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Jason Williams, Principal Landscape Architect with SLR Consulting. If we could start to the first slide. We wanted to go briefly over some of the changes that have been made. As Jay mentioned, there's been a lot of back and forth with ARB, extremely constructive. Next slide, please. So starting with some of the elements that came up even in this last presentation with A, we have added a 25-mile-per-hour sign along Hecker Avenue if you're leaving the site, turning right, heading west down Hecker Avenue. That was asked for. We also expanded. Yeah, sure.
Turn back where it was, we can see it and it can't. Thank you.
Sure.
It's also up here.
It's up here.
That's no problem.
Thank you.
Sure. We also expanded some of the drive lanes from 24 feet to 26 feet, which is to fire code here, and just to the west of Building A. Additionally, we added loading spaces throughout the site. I think that's one of the topics that came up. Where's Amazon going to drop off? And throughout the site, behind all of the buildings, we added drop-off locations for packages. We also added short-term pickup drop-off for food delivery, Uber, but that can also double for move-in, move-out. We've added a courtyard feature to Building B. This came out of the ARB. They said, you know, we want to see Building B broken up a little bit. So we've added a courtyard in that space, which we'll get to in a little bit. And then lastly, G, Building A. Building A changed considerably. Previously, it was just a really linear, straight shot, and we've curved that around so that we're really, adding more interest to Thorndale Circle. Next slide.
Are you adding signage for the drop-offs and the loading areas?
Yes.
Inside the site?
Yeah, small signage.
Yeah, like 15-minute parking kind of thing, so that
Exactly.
people don't park there permanently?
Yeah, there'll be decorative signs too. They won't,
Yeah.
be regulatory traffic level signs.
Right. Okay.
So we've had a lot of back and forth with ARB. If we go to the next slide, I just want to go through some of the changes that we've made. So on the left, we started off with,
Just to be clear, are these changes from prior, or are these changes since you've seen ARB and they haven't seen it yet?
no, these changes come as a result from feedback from ARB.
From your most recent meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so this is what you propose to show them in November?
These come from, we've been to ARB twice, so they're kind of a culmination of both of the meetings. And they've seen these
Okay.
Last week at the meeting.
Okay, so everything we're going to see, they
They've
saw.
already seen.
Right, so we're not
Got it.
seeing new
Okay.
stuff.
They've already seen,
haven't
and they've
That's what I was
had
just trying to clarify.
additional minor comments
Got it.
that will tweak. So essentially on the left, you can see the original concept was gray and modern. And we're moving to the right into what we call more of a maritime kind of concept. By adding shed roofs, an arcade to some of the buildings, single hung windows, fiber cement shingle siding, toning down the colors, going from that cold gray to more of a warmer coastal feel. We feel that this really fits in with Darien. But you'll notice in the landscape, the plaza feature, the robust landscaping remains. Next slide. The original concept for the clubhouse was not taken very well by ARB, and so we went back to the drawing boards and really changed it up by adding stone facades at the entrance to the clubhouse, chimneys, as well as gable end roofs, faux wood treatments throughout in the underhangs here, as well as a porch feature that looks over our pool area, robust columns, and then stone along the entire bottom. You could see there's a lot of windows, a lot of light is getting into this building, but even more importantly, tenants are able to look out into the landscape, which is beautiful, and we'll get to. Next slide. So I mentioned Building B, breaking up that a little bit by adding this courtyard feature, but again, with the textures and the colors of the building, you can see we're going from that cold to the warm and introducing this central space as a placemaking element and backing that with a nice brick facade that ties into the pavers below, as well as textural changes like the shake and the clapper on the buildings.
It looks like you're adding an entrance there too?
That is the new entrance.
So you're taking the entrance that was to the left and putting it in the middle?
Exactly.
Are you losing an apartment at the bottom level? Or are you just pushing it back?
No.
Okay.
The units have just been, slightly
Reconfigured.
tweaked.
And this is for Building B?
This is for Building B.
Okay.
Next slide. So this is another view of Building B and the plaza. What we've actually done is we've modified the parking area. We had parallel parking along this entire roadway. We've eliminated it so that we can have a really nice bump out area planted with low bush blueberry, granite bollards as a safety element, paver plaza, wood benches, that all kind of as well as our upright hornbeam, columnar hornbeam trees that create this nice alley with a central fountain feature heading into the entrance.
Are you going to have uplighting on those trees at night?
That would be nice. We haven't gotten there yet,
Okay.
but it would be really great to have in-ground uplights.
Unless you're living in the corner units.
Right, there's also, the dark skies, compliancy
Right.
is really doesn't work too well with uplights.
Yeah.
But there are other options,
Okay.
Next slide. So this is a view of Building B. If you came in Hecker Avenue and are looking kind of up the corridor, on the left-hand side is our park feature. And again, going from that modern Cubanist form to the gabled and nautical architecture. Additionally, I think something that ARB wanted is they wanted a little bit more placemaking in this area. So we've eliminated the 90-degree parking in this area and added an outdoor plaza with a bike rack that looks over the grand eco park feature. Next slide. If we're on Hecker looking into our site here, you can see the really different change in buildings with from texture and color, but also the addition of the arcade in our new building, and then really creating somewhat of a focal feature to Building B in the background from the previous rendition. Next. So landscape. I'm a landscape architect. I could spend an hour going through this landscape plan, and if you looked at the amount of call-outs, we really planted the entire site. There's almost no lawn, which was done on purpose. We've tried to use as many native plants as possible, from our large overstory trees of elms and red maples, northern red oaks. The evergreens we're using are the native American holly and white pine, river birch, serviceberry, even common witch hazel. Lots of different types of shrubs planted throughout. Allowing those plants to grow and really be a really robust, ecologically rich landscape of native plants. Okay. Next slide. So last meeting we went through kind of all of the park features. Next slide, please.
Yep.
We went through all of the elements of our eco park walkway and bridge surrounding our stormwater quality basins. Next slide. And we've planted this up really robustly. We've also added notes within the site plans that really detail how we're going to plant these basins. Because typically basins are not really thought of, Excavators are grading them and moving over them. The soil gets compacted. You throw seed down. A lot of the seed takes 2 to 3 years to germinate, and so you get weeds up. You can't spray the weeds because we're in the upland review area. So this is an extremely large area that you'd be hand weeding. It'd be impossible. Yeah. So instead of going through the exact regiment that we're going to be using to get this planted, one of the components is plant tightly spaced plants to really push out any weeds. Dogwoods, create a nice meandering around the area. We've got witch hazels and native viburnums in the area, and really a lot of perennials planted. We're also coming in with seed mixes in our lower wet bottom. We have New England wet mix, and in pink we have the New England detention basin for moist soils. But really to plant a basin like this property, you've got to have both dry tolerant plants and plants that can be inundated or can go underwater, so that no matter what climate change happens in the 3 years that we're looking for seed germination, we're going to have plants surviving. We're also putting bluebird boxes throughout the area, which we love.
And this hasn't changed materially from what you presented at EPC, right?
Correct.
Where I know you went, for people more interested in the planting plan, there's a lengthy discussion in EPC about the amount of planting, particularly the weeding on the banks of the river, the hand weeding, and all types of what you're going to do to ensure that over the next couple of years, so that 2 years down the road, you don't just have spraying and people just ripping all this stuff out and mowing it over with grass.
Yeah, exactly. There's no spraying, and as part of this project, we're doing a restoration enhancement along the edge of Stony Brook here, which is currently filled with all invasive plants, And so those will all come out by hand. New plantings will be put in there, as well as brush, debris, and garbage, which currently exists in Stony Brook, that'll all be removed as part of the project.
Perfect.
Next slide. When we were last here, there were some questions raised. Probably don't even remember them. A lot of them were very minor, but we put together slides just to answer those.
Before we get to drainage, 2 questions. Do you plan on having like lamppost lighting along the walkway through the
Bollard lighting.
bollard lighting?
Bollard lighting that, 3 foot high,
3 foot
just
high.
shines on the pathway.
And are you planning on, it's not a requirement, but are you guys planning on putting any kind of like emergency type of bollards like you might see on like a college campus that kind of have the blue lights in case somebody's walking at night, it's, that area is going to be darker than, let's say, the other area? Are we planning on doing anything like that or no?
We haven't planned it, but that's something I think we should definitely look into.
Okay. You know what I'm talking about? Like
Yeah,
the
blue
college
light
campus
system.
safety light?
Yep.
I don't think you need like a college campus where they're every like 50 yards, but maybe 1 or 2 because I can imagine it'll get pretty dark back there, and especially in that back northwest corner.
Yeah, the blue light systems. I'm going to turn it over to Tom Daly to talk about drainage
Drainage.
real quick.
Thank you, Jason. For the record, Tom Daly with SLR Consulting. I'm a professional engineer. And one comment picking up on the blue light, as we go through campus planning, the phone has really almost replicated the blue light system. Most campuses actually have apps for all that stuff, so we're not doing as much blue light. It's kind of, to be honest, it's a little old technology in terms of that.
Got
So, but in terms of making sure we have light controls that are, people feel safe and everything, we work with a lighting representative to work with that. Next slide. So as we started this project, before we even put a pen to paper, we were acutely aware of the site's location in the landscape in association with Stony Brook. The floodplain, the flooding issues that have posed significant impacts on the town. We were part of Mylan Broom. We actually prepared a very detailed analysis of all Stony Brook and a floodplain. I believe it's still on your town website. So before we even started, we were acutely aware. The other thing is Jason and I get really excited about projects like this because we're able to turn back the time. Frankly, we have such a greater toolbox in terms of water quality and how we manage these sites as opposed to currently, if you go out there today, there's nothing. The pavement just sheet flows, not even a catch basin, it just sheet flows with a leak off right into Stony Brook. So as we come into a project like this, Jason and I are working very closely day one. So you'll look through this project and you'll see the very, very robust stormwater management plan. And compliments to the town of Darien, you have gone beyond most communities, some other Fairfield County, where you're saying, looking at it against existing conditions is not good enough. We want you to go back in time, and I believe you call it the Fresh Meadow version. But because this project is so developed today, when we go back to Fresh Meadow, it's a significant improvement over existing conditions. So I think the commission asked for a little bit. So, and we put together a plan that we believe finds a balance between it's not exotic to the point where it's so hard to manage and where we have all these crazy things on it. We really have put together a plan that we think can be easily maintained along with the maintenance, because that was a question from EPC. Great, how is this going to be maintained and how are we going to take care of this? Now, Trammell Crow clearly has a long reputation in terms of maintaining property, so that's really good. But we wanted to come up with a plan that found that balance between good stormwater management, but not so exotic that it's complicated or really expensive. So, but we have come up with a plan that has a lot of elements to it. So, first of all, we have catch basins standard catch basins on the street typically have a 2-foot sump for sediment control. Our catch basins have 4 feet. We have 8 water quality chambers, so prior to going into any discharge, a stormwater basin, or a chamber system, we have basically a swirl concentrator or a water quality chamber. We want to catch any debris there before it even gets into the chambers. We have 7 micro depressions or rain gardens throughout here. Once again, trying to find every little pocket of space. You'll see those on this plan in those light blue areas at the bottom. The little pocket of space, how can we just every time we touch a drop of water, how can we improve it? And then we go through 5 stormwater chamber systems, and then we have 2 stormwater basins, vegetated basins. So we really have this really deep toolbox. We also have permeable pavement. We have grass pavers to reduce the amount of impervious cover. And what's the result of that? The results of that is if we look at your fresh meadow conditions at the 50-year storm, we are decreasing the peak flow rate by 34%. Because we understand, now I'd be the first to admit, this is a very small piece in a very large watershed. But we felt we had an obligation and we had to do our part. But if you look at it, actually under existing conditions, we have almost a 60% decrease in peak runoff rates for the 50-year storm, the 25, the 10, and the 2. So we're going beyond the standard of the town is match existing conditions. Just through the nature of the development and all these other stormwater features, we've gone beyond that. In addition to that, we actually even looked at the volume of runoff and what that looked at. And through water quality volume and retention and infiltration in areas, we're actually decreasing the total volume of water coming off this site to the Stony Brook. As Jason indicated at the briefing, we also stayed away from the floodplain. We have no fill in the floodplain. We pulled the impervious surface out of the floodplain. So that's maybe not a calculable impact, in terms of total flow, but those are net positives. And clearly, any documentation, a good, strong, vegetated riparian buffer along a stream is always a positive thing, and it does a great job in terms of reducing that. We also providing the DEP's required water quality volume, and what that does is it not only does it get water to recharge into the groundwater and everything, but it also cools the water. So we have a water course, so having that hot summer runoff is really important. So by holding that first flush on site, cool it down, and retain it on site, there's that thermal impact that is mitigated. Next slide.
What's the change in total impervious?
Total impervious, we have a net increase in impervious of approximately 1.2 acres.
Okay.
But that's all mitigated through pervious pavement and other vegetated areas. And part of that, we're pulling it out. Next slide. And as I talked about, it's this treatment train. It's not nowhere on site does it go through one water quality feature and then go to the Stony Brook. We are doing this every element. So it's called a treatment train. This is a slide that shows first goes to that catch basin, next it goes to the water quality chamber, next it goes to underground chamber, so what you do is you have this continuous polishing of stormwater by the time it gets to the basin. And that's how you get the most effective stormwater, is if you continue to have that treatment train through there. The other thing about the treatment train is really we're looking to get the maintenance occurring in these 2 elements. If this is maintained, this is great, right? This just gets taken care of. There's a landscaping element, but in terms of sediment containment, debris containment, that all occurs in this, and then by the time it gets through there, that's more of a landscaping element. So that's the other thing. And it's simple and cheap to do it here.
Now, I know you have a maintenance plan.
Well, that's the next slide.
Yep.
So, next slide. And that was a big part of EPC. So you said,
Yep.
Great, we love the plan you put together. How do we formalize that? So we have 2 maintenance plans, actually. Jason put together a landscape and site maintenance plan, talks all about how the vendors are going to operate, how to deal with the plants, how to deal with pesticides, herbicides, where the zones are, and that. In addition to that, we have a stormwater maintenance plan that's on the plans, and it basically tells the operator, these are the expectations. We want you to inspect this twice a year. This is the indicator that you need to clean it out. So those are all part of that. And also, I think we also went ahead and gave some maintenance in terms of the floodplain out. We're not doing anything there, but that was really important to EPC to make sure we maintain that floodplain and make sure it functions to the best possible way.
So your cadence is twice a year. I'm more concerned with the drainage maintenance.
Yes, we typically do is now we don't use sands as much as we used to, but twice a year, we're expecting somebody to look down in a
And
thing.
see if it needs to be cleared
Correct.
out.
Right after the spring, after you get the winter thing, and probably in the fall after the leaves fall, those are the two critical times. So yeah, poke a head in. Now, if you stay on top of it and you clean out those two chambers, it's really not, it's not that hard. And it's embedded right on the plans. And then Jason put together this operation and maintenance plan. And I think there was some discussion with the commission of, could we potentially put that on the land records?
Yeah, put it on the land
To
record.
a maintenance plan in case something changed or something.
I
So
think we've been asking them to go on the land records, so this I think will too. But we don't
Yeah,
have any
and-
enforcement of that, do
We
we?
put a notice in the land records, so there's a formal
Notice
notice
that
saying
it's there.
the details of the plan
Right,
from the
right,
planning
right.
and zoning office.
But there's no way to enforce that they're doing it, right? We're not gonna have them
Um,
submit to you a letter that we cleaned it out once a year or something?
Yeah, I guess that's something the commission can deliberate over.
Okay. We wouldn't do it for a house, but something of this size, you know,
Right.
it might be,
Yeah.
even if it's once every other year cadence, one page to the office.
Particularly things that are on our water course.
Yeah,
we do that all the time. It's a
Okay.
fairly, some communities, especially communities with water resources, town of Farmington,
yeah.
part of their MS4, the DEP continues to put more responsibility on the communities to show that in fact they are maintaining and they're applying these things. So there is some communities that say, hey, on February 1st, you need to send me a letter and you need to tell me what you did in last year. I mean, it's frankly just pulling it out of the maintenance. It's a little more challenging sometimes when you get on condos or single family and everything. The nice thing about this project, it's a single ownership, it's a maintenance company, but clearly that's a tool that other communities have found to be very successful, and it's a matter of just pulling things out of it, and typically they'll say, yeah, we cleaned it out, here's a receipt thing.
Okay.
And actually, your engineering department may appreciate that for their MS4 reporting.
We
So,
just, I mean, it's what Great Island is doing, right? So we might as
Yeah.
well do it here.
yeah, it's pretty standard operation, but you're seeing more and more of that over time. Because obviously, you're right, we put a lot of time and effort, EPC put a lot of time and effort in making sure that the plan was robust and it had those things, finding a way to do that. But we expect that these documents to actually be put into the operation maintenance plan, so along with the air conditioning units and everything, it's just that important. So, but we think we've tightened that up really well, and it really gives a clear out, like you said, twice a year, go look in the thing and do it on that.
Okay.
We also talk about the basins, if, there's some eroded soil, how do you go in there? Even, to be honest, groundhogs and those type of things sometimes undermine those. Next slide. And with that, I think sorry, back to Jason.
Jason Williams, SLR Consulting. Next slide. So as I was mentioning before, some questions came up at our last hearing, so we wanted to answer those. Starting with how long is the walk around or within our park? Well, in orange you can see that the trail length's about 815 linear feet, which is just over 1/8 of a mile. So you could get some exercise out here. What's also important is, if you can remember, we've added this kind of gathering, relaxing area, plaza space, but we also have some lawn areas here with educational signage as well as Adirondack seating, because the views of Stony Brook from here looking south are really the best views on the site. Next slide. Connectivity. So all of our buildings are connected by sidewalks. Our park system is connected to the sidewalks, which connect all of the buildings, the clubhouse, and the amenity area. We're proposing to put new sidewalks along Hecker Avenue. We also have existing sidewalks that go down to Boston Post Road. Next slide. And really, on a larger whole, our site connects to important areas in town. We've got sidewalks that connect us north all the way into downtown, to the police station, the library, the cemetery. So I think from a connectivity perspective, we are connecting pedestrians. Next slide. We also brought in some sustainability features. We've added EV charging stations to the site. So each building has 3 EV charging stations, which can charge 6 vehicles per building. We have, in yellow, 2 areas for bike parking, one at the clubhouse and one at our Park Plaza. And then I also mentioned in purple the loading zones located throughout the site behind each building. Next slide.
And inside the garages, if you wanted to put in EV chargers for the residents, will those be available?
No.
So if you live there, your EV has to be charged outside in one of the public EV chargers. Okay.
One topic that came up was where are people parking and how they're getting to the building. So based on your zoning regulations of 1 space for studio, 1.5 spaces for a 1-bedroom, and 2 spaces for a 2-bedroom, based on the unit count, the project is required to have 310 parking spaces, which we have. And the colors represent where those parking spaces are delineated for each building. So building D, all of the parking in green can accommodate that building. Blue for E, yellow for C, orange for B, and pink for building A. The longest walk is from someone, a tenant living in building C, who would park right here and would walk along a sidewalk and enter the back of building C. It's a 250-foot walk, which takes under a minute to do. So people are not going to be spending a lot of time walking to their building. But that being said, this is if everybody is parking in the spaces, and that's just not reality. So we looked at the ITE standards. I'm going to turn it over to Dave Sullivan, our traffic engineer, to explain that a little bit more.
Good evening. Again, David Sullivan. I'm with SLR, traffic engineer. Before I get into the next step on this parking, just to give you an update of what we've done since the last hearing. We met in, I believe it was the 2nd or 3rd, with the police commission and presented to them and got some feedback. And we have also responded to your peer reviewer with responses to all their comments. And all I'll say about that is ultimately the bottom line and the final impact numbers were essentially the same. But of course, they'll be reviewing the entire thing and I'm sure reporting on it. In the parking, so if we go to the next slide, please. What we looked at is what it might typically be the demands that we would expect here. So we looked at ITE, which was an easy source, and they have information and they have it broken down by 2+.
Just for the record, for the people in the room, what is ITE?
Oh, I'm sorry. Institute of Transportation Engineers. And they do different publications. One publication is statistics on how many trips get generated, and one publication is how much parking gets generated. So they collect that data and give you formulas to estimate that.
So basically, even though we might require 2 spaces per unit, real world, it's really going to be 1, maybe a visitor sometimes, so you get some 1.15 or whatever your number is.
Precisely.
And that's how you get an idea for, we have all these spots, but this is actually what we expect residents to park, and these are what's going to be just open for visitors and other people.
I couldn't have said it better. Thank you. So anyway, we went through that process, and they had statistics on 1-bedroom units, which we used for the smaller units. They have information on 2+ bedroom units, which we also use. So we segregated each building and came up with the real demands by building. And the same color codes that Jay talked about, you'll see are all the same. What you'll notice is a new color in the darker blue or purplish color that's surrounded by the dashed line. Those are the parking spaces that wouldn't be needed based on the demands that ITE provides for us. So, would they be exactly those spaces? Obviously not, but it gives you an idea of how much additional space would be available on site to give flexibility and the ease of parking on the site. So,
And do you have a count of how many spaces that is?
Yes, we, as a matter of fact, if I could,
107.
Okay,
no.
yeah. Okay,
Required, and then whatever the delta is at.
It's-
Yeah.
Oh, the blue spaces, yes, so 107. 199 is the demands that are shown up there.
And are they gonna be assigned parking for the units?
I would
Or is it-
expect not.
So even the covered portions are not gonna be assigned?
Those more likely would be, I would think.
Okay.
So that gives you some indication, at least what the parking in real life might look like. We go to the next slide. Some of these other things are things that came up that weren't, some were actually addressed in the peer review, but these were specific questions I believe this commission had. And what we're showing here on the left side is the current conditions, and we've identified the distance to the stop bar on Thorndale Circle from the shoulder line, which is about 40 feet or so. And to the right, we show what, in the green, you'll see the lawned area inside the curb extensions where we're moving the stop bar, we're able to move it to 15 feet away. So we're able to move it much closer, and we have the crosswalk right in front of it, or you could potentially move it closer, but about 15 feet is a good distance. It allows you an offset from the crosswalk and a full crosswalk in front of it. Next slide, please. Then we said, well, what's the impact of this? So we overlaid the sight lines onto both scenarios. On the left, those are the sight lines from the existing stop bar, and you can see it goes through those pink areas, which include some trees, some shrubs. It actually goes through part of the parking lot, particularly looking left, and you can see it moves you where you're looking through that parking. As you're looking right, you're looking through the corner of that parking area. On the right side, as we move the stop bar up, we clear all of that noise, so to speak, the shrubs and things like that, so you have a much more unimpeded view. And when you're looking to the right, you are looking in front of any vehicles that would be in that parking area on the right side there.
Is that town land? Okay.
We'd have to look closely whether it's
Do
town
we
land.
need an easement to get rid of some of those trees and stuff? Or somebody's gotta say yes to that.
No, the trees are not being removed. The stop bar is
Are
being
you-
moved up, so we're looking in front of the trees.
Can we put those in there? Are we is all that going into municipal roads?
Well, it's a state, most roads
That's what
is
I'm
a
saying.
state
That's
right of
my
way.
next question. Do we
They
get
do
the state
need state
involved?
approval for the project.
Okay, so you'll need the state approval to make these changes as well.
Absolutely.
Have you gone to them yet, these?
We have not. We've had some preliminary discussions just to see what they have going on in the area, see if anything that they have on their improvement books would impact us. The answer was no, but that was the only correspondence we had with them.
I don't think it's, we saw another application recently where we made it a condition that they would have to do work with the state, which ultimately didn't come to fruition, and they had to come back and modify that plan.
Yeah,
We don't want to get into a situation where you're proposing this, but then you're unable to follow through with this because the state says no, or they're non-responsive, or whatever.
These are not significant improvements in the state right away. Essentially, we're narrowing crossings, which they encourage us to do. We're adding those curb extensions, which is formalizing that parking area, even though it's kind of an unofficial parking area. So none of these are of significant consequences.
Right.
I think we'd be fine.
Yeah, one more just to add to that, Jay Klein. Typically, what happens, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, is the state will opine on, will say, don't even ask us until you've gotten your local, the planning.
Yeah, it's the
and zoning commission.
chicken and egg problem.
Yeah, right, exactly. So that's why we haven't gotten a response from this.
Okay.
Great. So that's the sightline
But the
considerations.
fog lines on Hecker, we don't need to go to the state for, right? Because those are town roads.
That's correct.
Right,
Correct.
fog lines, that what we're calling, that's what they're called, right? Okay.
Yep. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This was a question about how far the driveway is away. So we identified a couple of benchmarks. So you could see from the center line of the police department driveway on the right side of the screen, it's 117 feet to the center line of our driveway, which is, you know, fairly substantial distance. And somebody had mentioned how far is it from the walkway? And with my eyesight, it looks like 155 feet, maybe?
95.
195 feet.
Are you planning on maintaining that walk path, or no? No, that's right, it's gonna get cut out, right? Okay.
Next slide, please. Okay, the next three slides are kind of address the question of what the public might feel in terms of, you know, we talked about the reduction in traffic from the office, and we netted out that number, and it was important that that was understood what that number was, what is the actual site traffic, what is the impact particularly on Hecker as you approach Post Road. So we put these three slides together. This is the actual number of site trips, and these are from the development without any reductions or anything like that. And in the parentheses or brackets are the afternoon peak hour, and the numbers without the peak hour, without the brackets, are the morning commuter peak hour. And you know, they speak for themselves, but if I had to characterize most of them, and they're fairly low traffic volumes, particularly on
So can you walk us through these numbers? So like at the
Sure.
Hecker Ave and US Route 1 intersection, so that line is not obviously Hecker Ave. The Hecker Ave is to the west of that line, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
that you're saying right now, is that existing conditions right now at the
No,
current vacancy rate?
those
Or what?
are only the traffic that would come from this development.
So this has nothing to do with what's there now.
It's
This is
got
just what's
nothing
going to
to
happen
do-
once it's there.
Right.
Incremental.
Yeah.
So this is just to give a flavor of what the traffic is that's being developed.
So
So if
what-
we look up at the Thorndale Circle intersection.
Right.
And we look at
813. What does that mean?
13 is the number of left turns out of Thorndale in the morning.
And 8 is
8 is the number of right turns into Thorndale
I
in the
see.
morning.
so you expect 13 out and 8 in
Right, and the 5 are right
Rights.
turns out,
and left in.
and 3 is the lefts in,
Okay.
okay? So that goes through all 3 of those intersections. Yeah, and it looks like the aerial has shifted a little bit. I apologize for that.
That's fine. So it looks like to me, you're saying that out of Thorndale, this is morning traffic only, or is this morning peak?
Morning is without the brackets, and afternoon is with the brackets.
Okay, so morning out and in on Thorndale, you're thinking 18, and in the afternoon, you're thinking 13 in. 18 out in the morning and 13 in? Or 11, sorry.
Yes, 18 out and 11 in. And
So 18 out in the morning, 11 in the afternoon. On Hecker.
no, 11 in, 11 in.
Whoa, excuse me. The public will have a chance to speak to this, so we're just
So-
trying to understand this.
So it's
So,
18 out in the morning,
yep,
and in is 3 plus 8,
11 in. And this is
Correct.
just the peak hour morning.
Just
This
the
is not
peak hour.
total from 7 a.m. to noon. This is just
Correct, and it's just that,
Excuse me.
excuse me,
Just so you know, everything is being recorded, so I can hear every whisper and every word, so please, if
please.
you're at the podium, speak. If you're not, please be quiet. Thank you.
so that gives you the traffic volume on Thorndale.
Yep,
There's also the traffic in and out on Hecker.
Hecker. So on
Which,
Hecker.
when you add those up, it gets to the numbers in the,
And just so, on Hecker, you're thinking 12 out in the morning, 10 in. What is the 41453 that's already on Route? Is those just already traffic on Route 1? What are those numbers and the
So-
6.2s?
so what, if we're down at Hecker and Route 1, the 7 are vehicles taking a left onto Route 1.
No, I get the 7 and the 7 and the 5.3. What are the other sets? Yeah, those guys.
So those are, if you're taking a right turn out of Thorndale Circle and heading towards Stamford.
Oh, that's the traffic that's coming from Thorndale already on Route 1 that you're adding.
Yes,
I see. Okay, so your 5 is making a right in the morning, and that's your 5 coming down the street right there.
correct.
And your 13 is making a left. I see. Okay, and 3 is going, I see, okay. And what's the 6 and 2s?
The 6 and 2,
Those,
so
yes.
those are coming from Stamford.
Oh, those are just traffic that's just flow that's already there?
No, they're coming in. So the 2 and the 2 taking a left are coming in and taking a right at the Hecker driveway. And the 2 that are going straight are part of that 3 coming in on Thorndale Circle.
Okay. And then you expect 6 in to the other entrance on Hecker?
In the morning.
In the
correct.
morning?
Yes. Remember, in the morning, most people are leaving the residential projects, developments, and entering primarily in the afternoon.
And then you think 24 going on from that entrance, that exit, that curb cut, the new curb cut on Hecker, you're thinking a total of 24 making a right towards 95 and 11 making a left towards US Route 1 in the morning
Correct.
at peak hour. Okay.
All right.
And you're thinking 6 and 20 going in. So that's going to be the majority of the flow is going on Hecker, it looks like.
It's slightly, well, yes, in the afternoon, it's about equal, because it's more convenient to enter
When you
from
come off
Thorndale.
95 and make
Yeah.
a right after Whole Foods and you
Correct.
come down this way and make another right. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, 'cause that's just a 95 on-ramp at Hecker. To get off it, you get off on the other side of the street. Way on the other side. Yeah. Okay.
okay.
And
So-
this is just peak hour.
This is just peak hour, yes.
Okay.
So this next table, we were asked, we gave the example last time that if the office building was fully tenanted, there'd be, some 150 office trips that we're comparing to our site traffic. And then I think we also compared it to medical office, which could be 450 or 650, depending on the peak hour. But then it was what's the real feel, so to speak. So what we did, and we had done this, but we pulled out the information we counted the traffic going to and from the occupied buildings today. And that's in the top line. On the bottom line are those same numbers that we just talked about on the Thorndale intersection with Post Road. So that shows the comparison of what you might expect compared to what you feel out there today. So in the morning peak hour today, there's a total of 52 vehicles turning in and out. And in the future, that number will be 29. And again, during the morning, with that right turn on Hecker, that's a smaller number, but you can see the real feel is a handful of less cars. In the afternoon, it's about the same, different orientation, which actually works in our favor because the orientation is in as opposed to the office building, the orientation is out when the Post Road traffic is highest. But the total is about the same, 49 versus 47.
And then just off, I know it's included in your first traffic study, but off the top of your head, do you have the numbers for what would be a medical use?
Yes, as a matter of fact,
So
I have the
just-
notes here. A medical use in the morning would be 361
Total?
total, and that's based on that same ITE publication.
Yep.
And medical office would be 457 in the afternoon.
So just for reference, if this were redeveloped as a medical use, which is what sort of other towns have seen, you can kind of see those medical uses on, up in Norwalk, on the Norwalk-Wilton border that have all been sort of redeveloped. If we were to, which something similar might be applicable to this, that would generate 400 and change trips in the morning and in the afternoon versus this use, which is 29 and 47 at peak hour. So if we're thinking about alternative ways to develop this, if someone were to come in and put in an application, what else could possibly go back here? It could stay as office use, and which would be increased, right, from the 60% occupancy to, let's say, hopefully 100%, which would increase the 52 and 49, roughly doubling them. Or something like a medical use, which would somewhat quadruple or triple or 5x these numbers. So in terms of use-wise and intensivity of this property here, this is what the applicant is proposing for the traffic, which is a decrease in what is currently there and a potential, maybe some other type of redevelopment.
And just to your point, Mr. Chairman, Jay Klein again, that use on this property, I know we spoke about this last hearing, but for folks who weren't here, a medical office use can occupy this site without this, right? Without a public hearing. It could be just building permits, letting doctors move in, and that would occur without.
With the current buildings as of right, with no public hearings, with just build outs of the current offices there. You could have 450 to 500 at peak hour in the morning and the afternoon.
Could I inquire quickly, Mr. Sullivan, do these numbers for the existing development include the two buildings, I think it's two buildings that will remain that are not part of this new project, but do use Thorndal and probably will use Hecker?
Yeah, so these numbers do not. The analysis numbers where we estimated what the operating conditions would be do. So when we figured what that 52 and the 49, we actually had to count at 3 locations. We counted coming off the post road, and then we counted where the curvy driveway to building 1 is, so we could isolate that. And then there's the back parking lot that folks in the 3 and 6 building use. So we had to isolate that and to get the other 4 buildings, or 4 addresses, I should say, that we were pulling out. So we isolated the stuff that's staying, kept it in our analysis.
In your analysis, did you look at any type of traffic flow patterns that you could earmark for certain buildings to be coming in and out of Hecker and some to be coming in and out of Post Road? One of the comments that I saw in the public hearing comments was the ability to say, this gentleman, the writer, thought that everything could be handled to the Post Road, which made me think, is there, if we hear a lot of concern about Hecker and what's happening on that side for those residents that live over there, has there been any thought or analysis on if you designated certain buildings to go different ways?
Well,
to manage that?
Yeah.
Or do you think that's not necessary?
Well, first of all, we have taken that into account. So, the routing from the street system is slightly different for the buildings that are close to Hecker as it is to Building 1, for instance, or Building A. So we did take that into account. The level of service, existing and proposed, is level of service E coming out of Thorndal. So we haven't analyzed if we took the Hecker traffic and put it over there. Mm-hmm. If I had to guess, it would probably remain level service E. But
can you delineate for everybody what level service E means?
Sure. So when we analyze operations at an intersection, the guidance we use is the delay that you would experience as you approach that intersection to do what you have to do. So in this particular case, if you're pulling up to Post Road on Thorndal, if you have a delay of a small delay, 0 to 10 seconds, for example, it's the best level of service, or level of service A. As your delay increases because there's more and more traffic, the levels of service get worse and worse. At some point, you get to level of service F, which means your delays are, somewhere in a minute or better. So we like to keep them out of F range, obviously, And that's what we've done here, and we want to be sure not to diminish levels of service from what they are today, in addition. So the levels of service are A to F, and the letters are just the nomenclature for a band of delays, if that
Thank
makes
you.
Can I
sense.
ask a follow-up question? Is there one entrance that you see the delivery trucks, school buses, et cetera, using over the other?
I don't know about school buses, because the bus company typically will dictate what they want to do. We don't even know if they'll come on site, if they'll stay on Thorndale
Well,
and
that's
use that
another
circle.
question that, yeah, to follow up on, but yeah.
So that we don't know. We have looked at what the patterns would be for certain buildings and what might be the likely path, and we checked the turning radii. So for some particular orientations, they're going to come in and take the left turn on Hecker, if they're coming from that direction, if it's a delivery. If they're coming from the east, they're coming off 95 or coming Post Road from the east, they're clearly going to take the shortest path, which would be to come up Thorndale.
So they wouldn't be directed to one entrance or the other, is what you're saying?
They wouldn't be. They would be directed by their waves or their apps.
But not by
if they haven't been
signage,
there.
is what?
Yeah, and you know, the drivers that are accustomed to it will have their patterns fixed, and they'll find the path of least resistance. For instance, if it's male, they may determine that, well, it's best for me to take that right turn in off a Hecker and then do building, and then come out Thorndale. So they'll determine, but we've checked the turning radii for fire trucks and for single unit vehicles, which most of these deliveries are smaller than that. Most of them are the step van size. And they can make all the maneuvers and get to all of these delivery areas and drop-off areas.
And we're going to look at the internal flow, right, like for moving trucks and things like that too, as well?
We did look at moving trucks. It's the type of moving trucks that would come here are what we call the 40-foot trucks. You know, your typical Mayflower truck, not the articulated WB 62s, the over-the-road tractor trailers. We don't expect that for these size units that anybody's going to be moving in one of those. They have nowhere to put their stuff, to tell you the truth.
And any moving company asks your location as part of the vetting process, and they know what trucks can and cannot fit in there, and they assign accordingly.
Yeah, precisely. So let me get to the last one, which is kind of the three play of all this. So what we did here, because there was a question about how is this going to is this traffic going to interact with Hecker Avenue as it approaches Route 1, and is it going to have significant more queues or more delays? Is it going to impact the police department in operation? So the red numbers are background conditions. So that's the traffic if nothing happens here. With the 63% occupied, all of that, nothing has changed, and that adds both of these add the Corbin development to that traffic. So that's in both. So the red is that, and the blue are the numbers. If we take out the 63% office, or the 52 from the last slide, and we add back in the site traffic. And then we said, okay, let's look at some of the key statistics. So we looked at 95th percentile Q, which is what we consider the max Q. So 95% of the time, the Q is going to be within there. And for that one, you could see we're between 55 and 60, depending on the peak hour under background conditions. In combined conditions, it increases to 60 basically, or 61. So essentially not much change in that at all. If you think of a car, typically these numbers are generated assuming 22 feet per car. That's the size of the car plus a couple of feet before and after it. So we're looking at 2 to 3 car backup in all of these scenarios. So we see no impact to the queues. The delays is how long you wait, and again, this gets back to the level of service, and the levels of service are C and B, and the delays, which are more a finite measure of that operating condition. In fact, the morning delay, ironically, we're adding a little bit of traffic, but the delay goes down, and the reason is the right turns, there's more right turns being added than left turns, and the left turns take longer or have slightly higher delay parameters. So a right turn could go right on red, for example.
So, have you done these numbers? So when you leave the proposed cut and make a left, that's what these numbers are. But essentially, that's just going past the cemetery. Do you have the numbers going the other way on Hecker towards 95, which is more the residential side of Hecker?
We do have those numbers, but we don't have any analysis intersections up in that area.
I'm not asking for the far away intersection over by the 95 on-ramp at the end of Hecker, but what do these numbers look like? Because I think out of your cut, making a left, which are these numbers, it's not a very residential area. But if you make a right, that's where you get into where all the sidewalks are, that's where the fog lines are gonna go, that's where the houses are, that's where there's a lot of kids and people and school buses and the whole 9 yards. What do those numbers look like?
Well, we have all those numbers, and they've all been provided to Hardesty and Hanover. I could certainly go through them. I'll have to dig into our
Well, I think we're gonna continue this because we want to hear from Greg Del Rio. He yet hasn't had a chance, as they mentioned, to look at this. So why don't you save that as like a takeaway? Because I like kind of this presentation, but just what's going the other way, because I think the other way is really the neighborhood concern, less this way. Like if you could, I think, based on the comments that were submitted for the record, if you could somehow wave a wand and from your second curb cut and make everybody take a left, I think it would alleviate most of the concerns of the community. You can't do that, right? So people are going to make a right and they're going to go into the right, and people are going to come in from that way. So I think that side of Hecker is really the focus that the community is looking for. So maybe like that as a takeaway, just to understand what the traffic on that side of Hecker looks like.
Sure, we could do that. Let me just make a couple of generic points. So whether we had a Hecker driveway or only a Thorndale driveway, people that want to go that way, they would go that way.
Right.
The only difference would be that they would have to go through the other intersection. And likewise, the traffic that we're taking off from the office building, some of that is already going that way. So when that first slide where we showed 24 rights going up there, that's not the net number that's going up there. And we can drill down that a little bit better. It will be an increase, but it certainly is not 24 in that direction.
Right. That's what I want to get at. Perfect. Okay.
And that may be it.
Yeah. Like I said, for the general public, we're covering a lot of ground tonight as well. Traffic, we have a town. The town has a consultant that reviews all this data. We don't just take his word for it. We have an independent third party that comes in that's a professional that goes through all this. He has not yet had a chance to look at this revised plan and make his comments, whatever they may be. So we're going to continue this hearing to address those traffic concerns at a future date, probably in November. We have the date.
We'll get the date before tonight.
We'll get the date before tonight is over. But so traffic specific, we will continue to have another public hearing on and to go over because we have not yet heard from our independent analysis whether this data holds up to be true or not true.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we get to the public and probably Mr. Canis too, some things that I should have mentioned at the beginning that I neglected to, and I apologize. Jay Williams talked about the ongoing collaboration with ARB. You saw some of that work product this evening. ARB did give a positive referral to the materials and the color palette that we used in the landscaping. The landscaping seems to be a it is a huge strength of this project. So those two items were positively received. As Jay said, we're still working on a couple of details. We were trading emails. The fire marshal was occupied last week. We've been trading emails today. We think we're meeting with him a week from today to go over some of his comments. And we are also in conversation with the local or the legal traffic authority on getting their comments to you all by the November date that Jeremy will share with us later tonight. So I just wanted to give you all that update too, and I'm sorry I didn't do that earlier.
Okay.
So.
Well, we want to.
You want to take Mr. Canis, or?
Do we want to take do we want to take a 5-minute pause if anybody in the general public wants to use the restroom or get a drink of water before we're going to bring up the town's independent advisor to talk about drainage and verify the drainage and sort of flow water analysis that we heard before traffic. So that and then we'll get to the public comment sort of after that period. So I just want to, it's a good spot. If anybody
And
needs
alternatively, if somebody's here specifically that wants to comment about traffic and you have a conflict for staying this evening, you certainly will have an opportunity to
Come
give
again.
comment at the next hearing as well, when you have a little bit more meat about the traffic. So your choice, if you want to stay here or choose to comment next time.
Okay. See none? All right, Mr. Canis. And of course, all of these materials that are presented tonight and all of the town, this is all available online for your review. And as Jeremy said, any comments emailed to planning and zoning are part of the official record and review and carry the exact same weight as speaking at the podium tonight or at a future public hearing. I'll give him a second to.
Can you clarify where it is online? Because I just went online and I can't find it. The application and the comments today, or we can go on, but that's one of the questions I have.
Sure.
Okay,
So,
we can start with a hard copy of everything you see, including all the written comments, in Town Hall, Planning and Zoning Office, Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 5:15 p.m. Sometimes hard copy is easier for people. You can flip through, open up the maps, open up the plans. It's all here in room 211 of Town Hall during those hours. Relative to the online version, would you get there through the website? It's
Right,
through the town webpage, darien.ct.gov.
Right, it would be the planning and zoning office accessible from the town website. There are links on our page that direct you to our online permitting system called OpenGov or Viewpoint Cloud. There is a search functionality within that online permitting system where an address or application number can be entered, which should bring up the application materials for you.
This is PL-24-130.
And if you need any assistance accessing this information online, you should feel free to give our office a call, and we can certainly walk you through this if you're having a difficult time finding it.
Okay.
Okay. Take it away,
Okay.
Mr. Canis.
Thank you. Good evening. For the record, my name is Joseph Canis. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut, also a certified floodplain manager by the Association of State Floodplain Managers. I'm a principal engineer at Ty and Bond in Shelton, Connecticut, and we were retained by the commission to review the application, the stormwater management, grading, floodplain, and sediment erosion control aspects of the application. So we also reviewed this application on behalf of the Environmental Protection Commission. So a lot of our comments were made during that process, the bulk of our comments on our initial review, which was back in May. We probably had about 30 to 35 comments on the application, and through the EPC process, we were able to whittle that down, which is why the two memos that I prepared to the Planning and Zoning Commission, dated October 1st and October 22nd, are fairly small in terms of the number of comments, because most of the comments had been addressed during EPC. So, as Mr. Daly had said, this project does use a lot of forward-thinking stormwater management processes. First of all, the town does require the fresh meadow approach, right, which is you don't get any credit for the existing conditions pavement.
Sorry,
right?
sorry to interrupt
Sure.
you, just for a second. We got the, we don't see on the application the 22nd comments
Yeah,
from Mr. Canis.
I only see your comments from the first.
And I see the applicant's response dated the 17th, but I do not see that, anything after that.
I think I emailed those this morning.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought they were uploaded.
Okay,
Well,
so we'll add
tomorrow
those,
morning.
we'll add that to the record.
Sure.
So if you could go through the
Yeah, just-
details.
Okay, sure.
Sorry.
Okay, so essentially, the too long, didn't read version of my October 22nd memo was all our outstanding comments have been addressed. And those comments were based on October 1st memo, which were all fairly minor in nature. I think the most substantive one was there was a detention chamber system to the west of building D, I believe, right, where it conflicted with some of the proposed plantings. So they were, the applicant reconfigured that detention system so that that resolved the conflict. That was the most substantial comment in my October 1st letter.
Yep.
All right, so that's been resolved. But overall, from a stormwater management perspective, this site is a vast improvement over what's there now. Right now, if you've been out there, you'll see that, it was designed to the standards of the day, right? Runoff just sheets off the parking lot directly into the river, at that time, okay, river right there, great, and just put a pipe in and just send it all out. It's obviously more complicated now. Additional stormwater management measures are being employed. So the water quality that's discharged from the site will be vastly improved. For example, if you have a car that's leaking motor oil, right now it just gets washed in with the next rainstorm. Here, it'll get caught up in one of those separators where it can be removed as part of the maintenance program. And again, there's a lot of low-impact development measures. They got the infiltrators, they've got bioretention, permeable pavers, all great things that we like to see. Takes runoff and recharges groundwater, puts it back in the ground so you get less runoff. The runoff that you do have discharging from the site is of better quality because it's been treated. And also the other thing is that it's also cooler, as Mr. Daly had explained, right? Because you're taking that first flush when the pavement's really hot, it just soaks into the ground as opposed to running off into Stony Brook as it does now. So from that perspective, it's a significant improvement over what's out there now. And from floodplain management perspective, they're not into the floodplain of Stony Brook, right? And they've demonstrated that they are reducing peak flow from the site. Unfortunately, the site is too small compared to the 3 square miles of Stony Brook above the site to really have much of an impact. But every little bit counts. Certainly the water quality impact is a tremendous benefit. Those improvements will certainly help Stony Brook downstream. From a sediment erosion control perspective, they are fully compliant with the 2023 State Erosion Control Manual. So we have no further comments there. And with the grading, we did have some minor comments early on, but all the grading, keeps, is appropriate for the site. There's nothing that's, crazy out there, no very steep slopes or anything like that. So in general, our summary of the application is that it's fully compliant with the sections of the zoning regulations that we reviewed it under.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So for the general public, basically, our independent engineers verified that the drainage aspect of it, which is what the applicant spoke to with all the marshes and the water retention systems and the catch basins and all the vegetation, is going to decrease and significantly improve the current drainage there, which is parking lot to Stony Brook with nothing in between. no drainage at all. So you probably have more drainage at your house than this site currently has right now, if you have any kind of gutter system. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty fair assessment.
I'll open it to commission. Amy?
Just a question on, they've proposed 2 maintenance plans. Is there anything in either of those plans that you think would be hard for a new owner to take over?
Well, if this was, for example, me with my house, I would have a very hard time keeping up with these maintenance requirements. But this is being managed by a professional company. They'll be able to get a professional firm to do all this. And it's certainly to their benefit to do that. So, given that it's a larger entity, there'll be eyes on it. I'm not concerned about the implementation of the plan. And the town does have mechanisms to require maintenance under its MS4 permit.
Okay, thank you.
George? Mr. Riley?
No, sir, thank you. All good.
Nothing right now, thank you.
No? Okay.
Okay.
I think that is it.
Thank you.
One thing for staff, just can we include a reference to the EPC approval in the application?
Yes, we'll get a copy, we'll upload a copy for the
Yeah,
file.
just to have it, because we're going to reference it
Yep.
whichever
We'll upload
way
that.
the vote goes in, as part of the material, and a lot of this is covered in the EPC, particularly around the drainage and the plantings and stuff.
Yeah, it'll be informative for the commission to understand what they commented on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean-
Relative to many of the combination, flooding, drainage,
Yeah,
landscaping.
no, I was there for those meetings. It was
So-
it was a very detailed.
We'll
very
get that.
detailed.
Great.
Okay, great. So I will ask Mr. Klein if there's anything else he would like to further.
No, I think we'd love to hear from.
Well, before we get to the general public, let me just open it up to the commission to ask any questions in general.
Yeah,
I'll kick it off to my left.
Yeah, and you'll help direct the question to the appropriate member of your team. The question I have for Trammell Crow in general is Darien has been very fortunate in having some lifelong partners or long-term partners in our development work. Can you speak to Trammell Crow's average time on how long they hold their projects? And if not for tonight, maybe for the next hearing, I'd love to get some information about typically how long you hold your. We just had Avalon with us for 20 years, and they just recently sold. So I'm just curious about your track record on longevity in your communities.
What difference would that make to us?
If you want, Mr. Barsani, we
On
can.
all the
We can give a
comment that
more
was specifically
fulsome
made,
response
Trammell
next
Crow
time.
has a long reputation on maintaining their projects. I'd like to understand how long-term their horizon is.
Yeah, we can give you a
Yeah. Whether
mini
tonight or the
presentation
next-
on that next time. Yeah,
Just high level.
Sure. Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
George, anything?
Oh,
here?
let's be able to come up with a couple of things here. I noted one of the schematics showed Building B has solar panels. Is that going to be typical on this? Huh? No? I shouldn't have seen that?
No, I think that was maybe just a shading on the rendering. That was a pitched roof, not a solar panel.
No, they were solar panels.
It was standing.
You have to come to the. Sorry.
Can we go scroll to the beginning, architecturals?
Yeah,
And so you said Building B?
I think it was.
Just make sure that goes here.
There we go.
That's just standing seam metal roof.
What's that?
You know those copper ones that look like they've been put like.
Okay, so they're not solar panels and you're not using solar power for this?
No.
Okay, fair enough. The site has a fair amount of rocks, right, outcroppings. I haven't heard any talk about what they're doing with that. How are you gonna blast those things, or what are you gonna leave them? Are they gonna stay?
Tom Gilly for the record. Yes, actually, we went ahead and did a kind of not a full geotechnical study, but a exploratory study, and that really informed where we put a lot of the chambers, because we want to stay away from the rock. These buildings, and we also have a grading plan that really tries to fit with the topography. We have not evaluated at this time the actual rock removal methods. We're trying to minimize that. It'll be by both mechanical means, and if blasting is, then we will have to get a permit through your fire department, fire marshal is, and we'll have to meet whatever requirements you have.
Can you get an idea of the amount of cut and fill that's coming out, or mostly
Yeah, we
coming
can-
out,
we
I'm
can-
guessing?
Yeah, we can get back to you on that.
We generally
we
want to
have-
see the number of trucks or.
Yeah, we can get overall cut and fill rock, like I said, we just did a little exploratory, so it might be harder to pin that down. But yes, we can easily do a cut and fill analysis for the overall project, and we'll get back to you on that.
These buildings don't have basements, right?
No basements, no
So we're
basements.
not, are we dealing with sumps? No, right? On the ground level?
For like elevators or?
Yeah. like the-
No, I mean, they're not a lot of deep
That's what I
excavations
thought.
here.
That was my
And-
assumption, I'm
and-
just making
And
sure.
one of the reasons you'll see the placement of the buildings kind of work with the topography,
So that they're
right?
elevated a
And by,
lot.
instead of having, by multiple buildings, you'll see I don't think there's one finished floor the same throughout. We're kind of playing with that a little bit. So, and that was also to kind of reduce the cuts and fills. So we will do that analysis for you and we'll get back to you next month.
Okay.
Mr. Williams, I mentioned that there's going to be so much of the plantings, et cetera, there's going to be virtually no lawn.
Yes.
But then I heard, was it Mr. Daly say there's going to be a new acre and a fraction of lawn? How do we square those two?
No,
I think it was.
It was actually, the question was, what was the increase in impervious cover? Impervious, not pervious. So we have about a 1.2 acre increase in building, pavement, sidewalk, and parking.
Impervious.
Impervious.
Okay, so the pervious is less, going to be less.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Oh, the EVs you're going to have around, can anybody from anywhere drop in and connect with them?
I mean, this is a residential,
Private
not a
property.
public community.
Yeah,
It's a
okay.
private, yeah, so
They're
it'll
not
be
like-
for the
They're
residents, yeah.
How about walking around the new conservation area? Can anybody do that, or is that also going to?
I mean, we're not gonna have gates at the entrance, but, that's a part, it's an amenity for the residents primarily.
Uh-huh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, I think that's what I want to square away for now, thank you.
For the pool, do we need an idea about the cut and fill, like we would any other pool? Because that's going in the ground, right? I assume it's not an above-ground pool.
Correct.
Right. What's interesting, as they mentioned, is normally for a single-family residence, we talked before the meeting about basements. Most people in town want to take the footprint of their house and go down 8, 10, 12 feet, whatever it might be. Here, I think, based on what you're describing, the only place where you're going to be digging down more than a couple feet would be the pool.
Right.
And is the pool bigger than a normal 20 by 40 type thing?
It's 20 by, I believe it's 20 by 40.
Typical pool you might find in somewhere in Darien.
Yeah, it's actually not a huge pool. I'll look it up real quick.
Yeah. It's right next to 95, so even if they have to hammer it, it's not going to be a loud decibel increase.
And for the record, Tom Daly again, probably the biggest excavation is actually the underground stormwater chambers.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
that's,
of course.
Thank you,
the
Tom. I
foundation,
forgot
the
about that.
footings are, they're just kind of a little 3-foot frost wall, they're nothing, but to really show those advantages, storage, Tony Brook, there's a big investment on stormwater chambers, so you're right, that's probably where, and we put, as I said, we really probed the area, we tried to do those areas in areas that weren't rock and they were earth.
Correct.
So that's probably your biggest net, in terms of the overall
Cut.
cuts and fills.
It's 20 by 50.
Yeah, a little bigger than a house.
10 feet longer.
Okay. Anything else?
Thank you.
So a couple of quick things. We still don't have the updated architectural renderings uploaded yet, correct? Okay.
Jane, did you upload those new renderings that we saw tonight?
We just show you the before and afters, because it's not a final product, it's a work in progress, but we can upload those.
It's just helpful
so,
to be
yeah,
able
yeah,
to-
we can
yeah.
show you that there's a point in time image of where we're at, yeah.
Okay, and just for the benefit of the public, could you just very briefly talk about the progression, what the proposed progression of construction would be and the length of time for that approximately?
I think we'll get back to you on that. We can give you a construction sequence.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's kind of goes with the rock removal and the earthwork.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yep.
we'll work with the Trammell Crow and give you an overall timeline. These it won't be a phase project. What they do is they tend to leapfrog.
Okay.
So foundation, get the first thing, the next foundation goes to the next building. My experience over the time, these things lease up very quickly and they move along. And the framers come and they kind of leapfrog through, but we can give you a better indication and then maybe where the construction staging area is and that. So
Yeah.
we'll give you a kind
Yeah,
of
that
brief
makes sense.
logistics plan.
And just one last thing, and Mike asked for this last week, just next, when you come back next time, can we talk a little bit more about the internal traffic flow and also how it relates to the pedestrian flow within the site?
Yeah, I think once you have full
Yeah,
stuff
once
from the
those are
fire
fine.
marshal
Exactly,
and the police department, I think that'll go nicely with that. This way there aren't any changes. You do have a nice re-rendering of the fire truck route, but until that's final, let's hold off on that.
That's all I have for now.
Okay. I would just encourage you to think about making the underpass parking spots be EV at least upgradable in the future. Those ones were probably the easiest ones to allow residents to be upgraded. I know that at Corbin District, they allowed the internal garages to be upgradable to EVs, and I think every single one of them opted to do it. So when you give people the option, I think they take it, especially in this area of Fairfield County. EV adoption is a lot higher than on the country as a whole and even as the state. So I would implore you to, we're building these things potentially for another 30 years. You might as well at least have the electrical option to be able to somebody to install one. Okay. Okay, that being said, this is a public hearing, so I would open this up to the general public. If anybody would like to speak, please, gentleman in the back with his hand up, just come up to the lectern, state your name and your address, and then we'll take it one by one.
Right over here.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Peter Bigelow. I live at 9 Clock Avenue in Darien.
Welcome.
For the record, I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission for 10 years, 2 years as vice chairman, and I'm currently treasurer of the Darien Housing Authority. I've got some concerns about this project for several reasons. One of which a lot was discussed today about traffic and the Hecker Avenue side in particular. One thing I learned is that traffic studies are often misleading. And over the years, I learned that when we had a critical area in town that was needed to have a traffic study, I would sort of dedicate some time, park my car, walk over to the area, and spend about a half an hour looking at the site. And I wasn't counting cars, but I was looking at what kinds of vehicles are on the road. Are they cars? Are they trucks? Are they vehicles like people who are service providers where they are parking the vehicle on the road for a period of time to make a delivery? Or is it a road where cars are speeding? But more importantly, who else is on that road? Do they have people riding bikes, people who are jogging, families with children who are riding their bikes on the road? And also, along those lines, what kinds of housing or buildings are on that road? Is it commercial? Is it residential? What kind of an area is it? Do they have lots of indicators of children, of older people, so on down the line? And you go a few times. You'd go, during the week, go on the weekend to get a feel for what's going on, because once you start making traffic changes, you have kind of started the avalanche, if you will, of what might or might not happen. And in this particular area, and I happen to live relatively near to it, this is the poster child of a residential street. You do not want to have an additional 200 cars potentially driving through. It's just, it's a 2-lane road. It's got lots of residential if you go to the west on the road, versus you have the police department and you have a library. I've been on that road when the light on the post road is backed up to a point where I'm in front of the Thorndale Circle buildings that are on Hecker Avenue because it's backed up on the traffic side. I've also been on the Post Road where it's been the same way trying to get into Thorndale. It's just it's a busy area. And unfortunately, it's locked between two things one thing we can't control, I-95. So if I-95 backs up, the Post Road's backed up. If I-95 backs up, people then cut up Hecker Avenue. And it's a funny thing when you're going west on Hecker, as soon as you pass the police department, you hit the gas because you're trying to get up to Norotan Avenue. It's just a poster child of the wrong street to have this kind of traffic being fed into it. On top of that, you look at other traffic issues, and notably, I think we're going to learn in a year that potentially the Corbin development was too much development, and it's going to bring too much traffic into the downtown area, on top of the concerns with the highway backup and so on. Meanwhile, up in the Heights, you've got two developments. One's pretty much completed, one's being worked on. So you're going to have more people trying to get to Norotan Heights, and what roads can you take? You can clearly take West Avenue, you can take Heights Road, and you can take Hecker Avenue. So I think you're going to see a change in traffic patterns over the next couple of years as these developments finish up. So I really commend this commission to take a hard look at the traffic, and especially, is it a wise decision to open up Hecker Avenue for this project? I fear it is going to be causing a major problem, and the residents on that street are going to be paying the price for this development's traffic. And I don't think it's fair for any of those people to have to do that. Next item is this, generally speaking, overdevelopment. And I know that when I was on the commission, there's a lot of pressure to do stuff. Let's get downtown going. We're able to get the theater redone, a bunch of things started. Norotan Heights is always a big question mark. What can we do to get something going in Norotan Heights? And there's always the quaint aspect of across the sports shop or the hodgepodge of buildings and the Corbin building, and everyone said we need to do something. And I don't disagree at all. We need to do something, and things have been done. But look at the intensity of use and look at what it's doing to the town's ambiance. We're building big items. We're putting, basically pouring a gallon into a quart container, and it's going to splash over. It's just not going to be a successful program. I just commend that you look long and hard at the intensity of what's going on in this development, because it's the one in front. Be very careful what you wish for, because you might get it and it might not be what you really wanted. I look at 175 units going into this area. I get it as an office park. You had cars coming through, cars leaving. An office park, it's almost always morning rush, evening rush, 5 days a week, no holidays, no weekends. This is going to be basically 18 hours a day, 7 days a week of traffic. Maybe not tons at every given time, but it's going to be traffic. And I know people, if I lived in that building and I saw the traffic pattern, I would be using Hecker Avenue every time, because I'd have a stoplight in Post Road, I have a stoplight in Norotan Avenue, and I can cut through the neighborhoods to get down to other areas. So it's an intensity of use which I'm very concerned about, and the traffic is a symptom of that intensity of use. And then finally, you're going to have 110, I believe, 2-bedroom apartments. And we learned something from Avalon. You get a lot of families move to town because of schools. And so I don't know how you plan, but being the realist I am, I would be telling the Board of Education to assume you're going to have 110 additional students in the school system in the next few years. And that's going to add additional burden and cost to the town. Again, it's the magnitude of a development that really has to be looked at. Is it in the best interest, short-term or long-term for the town? And I'll come back to the plan of conservation and development, which goes every 10 years, and I was involved in the one in 2006, and I've read over the one over the years. That was 2016. I know you're about to start that process again. And nowhere do I see in the desires of the town that we should be building market rate apartments. I see we want to have a balanced amount of housing. I see we're primarily a single family housing. I see there's been in the past need for more 3- and 4-bedroom condominiums and for affordable housing, which I certainly understand in my housing authority position. This does nothing about condos, does very little about affordable housing, so I just come back to think long and hard about you know, the magnitude of this project and the traffic flow it's going to cause and where it's going to be causing those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Jay? You come to the podium for a second? Oh, I got a question for you.
Oh, sorry, I was just
Yep.
sitting.
As part of the analysis, can you determine how many likely students will be in this building?
I could, but someone who could do a better job and who has done that
Yeah,
work already.
could we just talk about it?
Is Craig Flaherty. Do you want him to come up now?
Yeah.
or-
Just to address. It's in there.
It's in
It's in
there.
there.
Oh, it's in
Just to,
there.
just to, just,
uploaded.
yeah, just to remind us.
Okay.
If you could, for the record tonight.
Good evening. My name is Craig Flaherty. I'm a president and senior engineer with Redness and Mead, a land use consulting company with offices in Stamford and Wilton. I am here as a consultant working for the applicant, not in any official capacity as a volunteer for the town, as I volunteer on the sewer commission. And of course, recuse myself from any discussion on this application when it was before the sewer commission. So in the record and on the website, you will find an estimate of school-age children in multifamily housing dated August 28th, 2024, submitted with the application. And we do a couple of things in this. The first thing we do, there's a very robust data set available to us. It was a study out of the Rutgers Center for Real Estate that looked at 30 to 40,000 units across New Jersey and other areas and tabulated those to 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, low rise, high rise, affordable, market rate. And it's a very good resource to come up with kind of an estimate of the anticipated population of school-aged children. So we break down our studios and our 2 bedrooms and our 1 bedrooms. We break down our market rate, and we break down our affordable units, of which there are 25 out of 175. And we come up with a number from this robust data set. That number, in this case, is an estimate of 19 school children in the 175 units. Now, we don't just accept this data set as is. We go and actually take this data set and test it on things that we know in the immediate area to make sure that that data is applicable to the immediate area. So we looked at 3 different developments in the area. We looked at Avalon and the number of school kids there and what this data set would predict. We looked at a larger apartment building in Norwalk in terms of what this data set would predict, which is the number that were there. And we actually looked at Darien Commons once they were fully occupied at the before school started last year. So in the case of Avalon, this data set that we used to come up with this number predicted 89 school-aged children might live at Avalon. And this is because there are more 3-bedroom. That's really when you get it. When you have 1 bedroom, it's virtually 0. When you have a 2-bedroom, it's like, some, right? But it's not a lot. So it's when you get the 3 bedrooms, and also when it skews affordable, you tend to get a little more school-age children in an affordable unit. So the model predicted 89. The confirmed number of students at Avalon over a 5-year period average was 92. So the model was right on for Avalon. For the waypoint in Norwalk that we looked at, the model predicted 35. The number of children in that building per the Norwalk Board of Ed was 26. Darien Commons, the model predicted 11. As of last October, when that roster was complete, there were a total of 10 registered school children in Darien Commons. Again, when you have a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms in a center corridor type environment, people just don't choose that generally as a primary option when they have children. They make other choices. And anecdotally, we had heard also that of those 10 children in Darien Commons, half were actually transfers from within the school district. So it was a net 5 new children. Now you could argue that the 5 that moved out of, say, a home got backfilled by more, but still, my point is that the model is accurate.
Pretty close.
When real world tested
So
to
we're going to be
Darien.
around
19-ish.
20, 21, 17, somewhere
Yes,
in that neighborhood.
exactly.
And then just for the record, the 25 affordable is about 15%. I think 14
Yeah,
and
14%,
change.
yeah, 14 and change, yep, exactly.
Okay, which is our town regulation anyway.
Yep.
So I assume. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so there are some affordable, and I should know that Darien at 14%, as our town regs for affordable housing is higher than most suburban towns in Connecticut.
Absolutely. The typical is 10%.
10,
for
right, the state
zoning.
is 10, the state mandate is 10. So we encourage more affordable housing than, let's say, a town like Westport or Greenwich, which has its own affordable housing issues. Great. Okay, thank you. Anybody, sir, would you like to, I saw your hand went up first, so he beat you to the buzzer. We got, good evening, welcome.
Thank you. My name is William Freight. I reside at 47 Hecker Avenue.
Welcome.
So my property has, backs up to the wooded portion of the Thorndale property
The
that's being
western edge of it.
undeveloped. And my concern primarily is traffic and the Hecker Avenue curb cut. And I've heard these traffic studies out of the booklet a couple of times, at the last hearing and this one. And they seem to defy credulity from my perspective. On the one hand, the numbers that we hear of cars coming onto Hecker Avenue at rush hour and coming back at the end of the day don't really support a curb cut there. If there's 9 or 11 cars leaving the property onto Hecker Avenue, those 9 or 11 cars can go out Thorndale, as they've been doing for the last 50 years out of that development. So given the numbers, although I don't believe them, if we use those numbers, it just doesn't seem like there needs to be a curb cut there at all. And that all of the traffic and all of the service vehicles and all of the emergency vehicles can have ready access off of Thorndale. The idea of turning right out of there to get to a northbound entrance at the other end of Hacker Avenue, when you can go out to Thorndale and you can get on a northbound entrance right across the street from the Jaguar dealership. It's virtually the same distance to go northbound. And I think if you're going to go southbound, it's got the same set of problems. You got to go to Norotan Avenue up over the hill and left instead of down to Ledge Road and getting on across from the dump. So, I think, the development can be accomplished without that curb cut. I would be very curious about how the police department feels about it, how the fire department feels about it. And we seem to be hitting these public hearing spots right in between them releasing their thoughts on the matter. I also think that I've been to all of these so far, and I think there was a bit of a disservice done to our local community because about 20 people got up and left because they didn't want to hear an engineering study when they came here to talk about traffic primarily. I feel like that's a disservice. I know at the last meeting there was discussion about the public being able to be heard, and to stick an engineering study in between the traffic and the end of the meeting just, I don't know. In my mind, that wasn't well thought out because I heard a lot of disgruntled people leaving here tonight, and it's. I do believe that these people want to work with the neighborhood, but that just ran contrary to what I just witnessed.
For what it's worth, personally, I made the announcement to let them know that we don't have the benefit of our peer review report, and we want to make sure that they hear both sides and our professional peer review. And I didn't want them to sit and wait through longer when I knew they weren't going to get to hear that meat. So I did
the
that
meat
as
and potatoes
more of
of what we're actually looking
it's
for.
8 o'clock at night if you don't want to sit around and then be told an hour and a half later.
Right, well, thank you.
And just for reference too, we always allow the applicant to finish their presentation for the evening, and then we move into public comment. We never break in the middle for public comment in the middle and then have the applicant continue their presentation.
Yeah.
So that's just.
Not trying to be too critical, but I did see what happened, and it wasn't good. So I would like to thank the commission for asking pointed questions in the last couple of hearings. I think that you guys are looking at this in a thoughtful manner. I think that the questions about traffic that you brought up at the last meeting were quite pointed, and you know, because what I hear here is, you know, the sort of the boogeyman of a full medical complex going back there, and if that was to be, the property wouldn't need to be sold. The commercial buildings would be full right now, in my mind. And the fact that there is already a medical building back there. So anyway, I'm grateful for the process. I'm grateful for the fact that we have a continuing set of hearings that build on each other, and that everybody on both sides is giving consideration, because I did see adjustments made from the last meeting that we had here from the developer, as based on, you know, the board's comments. So I would thank you for that. I'm trying to think if I had another question since I've got the mic. I think one was the demolition. So all 5 office buildings would be demolished kind of simultaneously. Is that one phase of what's going to go on, and then the site development starts from there?
So I think that'll be included in the next hearing, where they'll talk about the phases. And certainly, this is a lot more than just tearing down a house, you know, notice a demo, 45 days, then, you know, an excavator takes it down in a day. So that plan will be at the next hearing, for sure. And then just to address your other comment, when we do get fire marshal, police comments, they will absolutely be in the record. As soon as they're, you know, we'll discuss them in the next meeting, but if they come in the interim between now and whenever that date is in November, they'll be in the public record as soon as they're, you know, submitted to the Planning and Zoning Office for everyone's review.
So I guess in closing, I'll say I've lived on that property for 35 years. I visit it. It was built by my great-grandfather, so I'm 4th and 5th generation on that property, and I can tell you that the Nielsen's have been really a great neighbor for all of those years. And I know there's things about stormwater runoff and all of that, but I can tell you that with the development that's been there for all of these years, there's virtually no impact on Hecker Avenue. We've had 2 buildings right on the sidewalk of Hecker Avenue, and yet there's no impact on the neighborhood, on our direct neighborhood. And that's, you know, my big concern, is opening that up to our neighborhood unnecessarily, which is my perspective. I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To the gentleman in the back who just missed the buzzer on the last round.
Yeah, reluctantly, he stole some of my thunder.
No problem. Welcome, sir.
I got a tough crowd to follow. Just for the record, I'm Reese Hutchison. I own a house at 70 Hecker Avenue. I served with Peter on your commission many years ago, and before that EPC, and following that the Sewer Commission. I did see this application on the Sewer Commission, as I thought I'd never have to come and speak or address it all, and I didn't even look at the site plan. But just for the record, I did serve on the Sewer Commission. We favorably approved the sewer capacity done by Craig's firm, which was really, really well done. So let's go back a look in history a little bit here. Where we got to the overlay zone really was what we saw from Garden Homes. It was an existing office complex bought during the RTC economic downturn that wasn't viable as an office park anymore. And he was able to convert that into small apartments, keeping the footprint, and more importantly, not impacting the neighborhood. That's what a special permit is. It's allowing an overlay zone like this with certain findings. And you guys are the finders of fact. And it's sort of a do no harm. You've got an existing heavily used property, and you've got an existing neighborhood, and how do you balance those two? Now, the one thing I heard most saliently from the traffic engineer is, in his report, at peak hour, there's 11 cars that will leave this site, turn left, and possibly influence the level of service on the traffic light at Hecker Avenue. It's just 11 cars. So where's the need for the access onto Hecker? If the cars are going to go right out of the site and right up Hecker, they're going there anyway. Anybody in the public can do that now. So the curb cut for 11 cars is where I come in. Is that the tipping point of the imbalance that we're feeling here? This is a college campus. It's greater than we ever would have approved when I was on the board as an overlay zone for an office park conversion, which really in its intent was to allow for existing structures in our minds to be repurposed, not a college campus. Now, I think this is a nice use. It's definitely in the town plan, and once you added the inclusionary zoning, which I also happened to sit for, the first version, I think, it's a good thing. But this is greater than we would have approved, and I know that zone has been tweaked to allow for additional coverage and additional density. So it's an appropriate density based on all the uses historically, but I think it's the burden shifting on the neighborhood with the curb cut is more than I would have felt comfortable if I was in your position. Solar panels, great idea, and I think there's a right to accommodate coming for EV chargers, where the landlord's going to have to accommodate that to people that want it. So adding the electrical service capacity is a minimum that they should be considering, and you're right on about that. So that's where I stand on this. The other thing is the stop bar. The entrance exit as you leave Thorndale, that stop bar being 30 feet back is a hazard. And they mentioned a crosswalk that's going in. Well, is it a crosswalk to nowhere? Where does it go? It doesn't line up with what's in front of Nielsen's currently. Currently, there's a loading zone there. So I don't know if that's a safety issue that you might want to look at. No, 2 red lights on the post road function as almost the same as a traffic light. The minute you'd be leaving Hecker Avenue to get onto the post road, well, there's 2 red lights. You could leave Thorndale Circle at the same time with the same level of safety, except for the gas station and Shake Shack coming the other way. So I'd like them to look at that. So again, the neighborhood, the only thing they care about is a curb cut. And there isn't a demonstrable need for a curb cut for 11 people under a peak hour. So that's how I might look at it if I were you. And again, Jeremy, Fred, and everyone on the commission, I know what you guys do. I know the grief you get. And thank you for your service and kindness for Darien. And you'll sit back X number of years later like I am and wonder, wow, you had your fingerprints on that. And it's pretty neat, but it's a heavy responsibility. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Sir, please. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Rolf Hoban. I live at 9 Archer Lane. I'm going to give you this as a handout, although I'm probably going to also send it in to the commission by email. Similar to the person who spoke previously, Reese, a bit of my thunder has also been stolen, but that's fine. I also want to reflect back on the overlay zone, which was at COZR number 1-2021, which I think was the catalyst that started this whole process. And my understanding was that the intent, the spirit of that overlay zone was to provide a compromise adaptive reuse aid to the landowner. In other words, the town was being sympathetic to the landowner who was enjoying an office park for a number of years, and times change. People are working more from home, et cetera, et cetera. So the demand dropped, and so the landowner was, oh my goodness, what do I do now? So the town said, okay, we'll create an overlay zone which will aid you to then remarket the property. Okay, but I understood that spirit to be the property as it is. Yes, you remove the office element and you replace it with the housing element. Nothing more. This is a special application permit that now is before us. And so there are things that are being done on this property that I think go beyond the original spirit of that zoning overlay that was voted on back in 2021. So I'm concerned about that because the area where this is planned for is residential. It's R15 and R13. The application is for development within a residential area and subject to the plan of conservation and should be monitored with a do no harm disposition. That's my understanding, that's my view. The Town of Plan of Conservation, Section 10, page 98, maintain residential character. Okay, continue careful monitoring of land uses in and near residential areas, minimize impact on surrounding residential neighborhoods. Key considerations in terms of evaluating the overall impact on character, design, size, height, scale, density, traffic, parking, and quality of life. So that's what I'm looking for as a resident in this residential area from this project, okay? The area is designated DBR on the Plan of Conservation Densities Map, multifamily at 8 to 15 units per acre, R15, R13 residential. If you look at the Plan of Conservation today, that's what's in there for this location. Okay, now I understand we have the overlay zone, but prior to that, that's what the nature of this area was designated as being. So comparable developments, Avalon Darien was constructed in 2000, comprising of 189 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments developed on 20 acres, nearly 9 1/2 apartments per acre. There is one ingress and egress roadway to the campus, one. Thorndale Circle, 175 studios, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments on 11 acres, 16 apartments per acre, nearly 70% greater density than Avalon. So there's been a lot of discussion about the access from Hecker Avenue, and I'm also very concerned about that. Unlike Avalon Darien, this application calls for an added curb cut to provide entry and exit on Hecker Avenue with interest towards gateway elements and canopy views to Hecker Avenue. During a police commission hearing held on October 3rd, the applicant's traffic consultant acknowledged that residential traffic volume, i.e. number of trips, is substantially lower than office traffic, and residential traffic is more compatible with arterial streams. The applicant's engineer consultant gave no traffic-related safety reason or need for a curb cut on Hecker Avenue. In other words, this is a special application. There's no rights, okay, per se, to just do whatever they want. They have to prove a need and state with some validity that the need is legitimate. And that has to be presented to you, and you have to say, yeah, that is legitimate. That's my understanding. And I haven't heard any of that with regards to the Hecker curb cut, other than it'll be very convenient, okay? And that's, to me, that's not a valid reason to put in a curb cut and add that traffic to the neighborhood. So that's another perspective that I have on this. Darien emergency responders, police, fire, Post 53 utilized Hecker Avenue to gain access to I-95 via Hecker Avenue to Post Road and I-95 on-ramp. Added traffic to Hecker Avenue raises concern regarding the possible degradation of traffic service at the Hecker Avenue Post Road stoplight intersection. I'm told by neighbors, because I don't live on Hecker Avenue, but neighbors have all conveyed to me, first of all, a great deal of anxiety about this application, but that there is a regular occurrence of emergency vehicles of all different shapes and sizes that utilize Hecker Avenue, okay? So that's something else that you have to take in mind, that if you start adding more traffic with emergency services needs, that could get a little dicey. Okay, we talked about the stop bar at Thorndale, so I won't go over that again. The 2 traffic lights on Post Road, I won't go over that again. And of course, everybody mentioned that, you know, Hecker Avenue is definitely utilized for bus service, school bus service, children. And so that also should be taken into consideration. One thing I'm going to bring up, which I haven't heard any much talk about, is Lot 9, 2.4 acres, that is designated to be going into a conservation easement agreement. And my concern is that, well, first of all, the applicant receives bonus points for conservation easement.
thusly adding to the site plan building intensity. But my concern more is about the stewardship of that property. Historically, that stewardship is transferred to the Department of the Darien Environmental Protection Commission, EPC, which historically has focused its efforts on application reviews and less on monitoring land conservation and stewardship enforcement. In other words, okay, we're going to essentially transfer the stewardship of the property to EPC, and my question is, how are they going to take care of it? Because they have no function within their organization. They have no budget. They have no staff to go out and take care of this property. So that's a concern, and that's something also that needs to be taken into consideration. The commission should review the conservation easement grant process, and given the fact that EPC has not implemented stewardship financial tools as part of their repertoire. They have the power to do it. There's a state law that grants them all kinds of powers to raise money, to in fact even levy a tax in the interest of environmental protection. They have not done any of that, and thusly there is no stewardship as far as I can tell. Okay. Architectural Review Board, yes, they've met with the ARB. The ARB raised questions about eliminating some of the apartments to reduce density on the property. The applicant has indicated no willingness to consider the ARB's suggestion. So there's an impasse there as far as I can tell. Thorndor Circle application premise. One of the premises of this application is to provide a viable alternative for residents interested in downsizing their lifestyle. Thus far, developments completed and those in progress under similar guise have not yet proven that that will be the case. I refer you to Knesset, which was marketed for empty nesters, but today school buses stop at Knesset to pick up children living in the complex. So the marketing and the reality are not the same. Okay. The development will impose more need for town services, building inspectors, fire marshal, emergency services, fire department response, police calls, public works, schooling, parks, health services, etc. I certainly hope the property taxes offset the cost of these town services. The proposed development, in my view, is too dense. The applicant's desire for access to Hecker Avenue in support of their site plan and tenant convenience with little consideration of its impact on the surrounding residential community has not proven from a traffic safety perspective that a curb cut on Hecker Avenue is necessary. They need to stay in their lane, which is Thorndale Circle, okay? I am hopeful this application will be judged with laws of reason and not laws of will. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman in the front, I saw his hand go up first, and then we'll get to the lady waiting so patiently in the second row. Welcome, sir. Good evening.
I'm Andy Millar, elected member of the Darien RTM. This project is not in my district, and really, or at least not currently in my district, but my voters do have questions, and I've learned a lot this evening so that I can answer questions with more knowledge than I could have 2.5 hours ago. I have two very fundamental questions. Forgive me for their incredible basic nature, but I heard two very important words, trammel and crow. What specifically is that company's role in this project? And then I have a second question after that.
Why don't you answer both, and then we'll see if the applicant can answer that.
And
I'm
the
sure
second
you can answer the
question
first
is,
one.
has it been determined what school district this project would be in?
Thank you.
I have only question.
Is that it?
I'm finished.
Thank you. I want you to take a seat. Jay, would you like to come up here and just do a brief of who Trammell Crow is for one of our elected
I know who
officials?
Trammell Crow is as a company, and those are magic words. And I'd like to know what their role is in this project.
Sure, who's going to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, Trammell Crow is the developer of the projects. They'll be building the project, completing the project, delivering the project to the community. In terms of the school district, and I should say they've won awards, Developer of the Year, and then all sorts of accolades for the type of work that they do. In terms of the school district, we haven't identified that yet. I think the number that Craig mentioned, the 19, that's not all going to an elementary school or a middle school. Those are a little over a dozen kids spread over 12 grades. So that's something to add to your question. But thank you. You mentioned being here for 2 hours and having more knowledge now than you did then. Thank you for sticking around, and we'll make sure we get that other answer to you ASAP.
Does Trammell Crow own the property now?
No, they're the contract purchaser right now.
Will they become owner and operator in the future?
Yes, they will own the property upon the completion of the transaction and
Will
the
they
result
have
of
a
its
third
approvals.
party be manager, general manager, rental agent?
Yeah, I mean, they have just like maybe present company excluded, a professional development team, and then they'll have a professional management team that comes in. I mean, these things are important assets to a company like Trammell Crow, and your reputation is everything, right? So it's important that this stage and the next stage are executed excellently, and they will carry that on throughout the process of this. Yeah.
Thank you. To the lady in the second row, thank you for waiting so patiently. Good evening.
Thanks. I'm going to be less articulate than everybody who has been so articulate. And my name's Nora Baker. I live across from Tokenique School. And I'm here tonight really because I didn't attend a Planning and Zoning Commission when Tokenique School was built, and it really impacted where I live.
What's your address? Just for
5
the
Rainbow
record.
Circle.
5 what?
Rainbow Circle.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got that?
Yeah, so we have now the entrance to the waste area overlooking Tokenique Road, where before it was a playground, and which was, where my kids went to play, and now we look at the garbage. So sorry to be so kind of rude about that. So my questions are, actually, as a follow-on, I'll only ask a few questions because it's getting late, as a follow-on, so we've heard that Trammell Crow will probably outsource the management of the property, or it wasn't clear if it was going to be, a third-party vendor, or they're going to contract out. Will there be any kind of oversight of that, like who they choose to outsource to? Will there be any sort of kind of audit of that on an ongoing basis, since we talked about this property being maintained?
We can ask and enforce that they submit a maintenance plan, which they've done, and we can reference it in the land records, a maintenance plan for both the grounds and for the drainage system. But this body doesn't have any ability to audit what service providers they use, as long as they conform and follow the maintenance plan. That's not something that we can, as a board, even entertain as part of this application.
Okay. My concern is mainly with the impact on the town services. Have the town services, like Post 53, been consulted on this already? What will the burden be? Has there been any analysis on that? There have been changes, as all of us know who live here, in Post 53 with the addition of paramedics. Has there been any analysis done, and have you heard from Post 53?
We have not at this time. Generally, we're only seeking comments from the fire marshal and from the traffic safety as it relates to traffic. The intensity of use is something that the town has to, allocate resources to, but it's not any applicant, whether it's a new house or a new building, has to determine, can they put this here because fire needs to have more fire trucks or something. So that's something that the town must address independently of any kind of application. I can tell you, we are just about to start our new 10-year town plan of conservation and development, and which is every 10 years we basically do a new plan. And as part of that, we're certainly focusing on what the intensity of use is in our town with all this new development. What will that look like? Just so we have a frame of reference going forward. We can't, as this body, can't really take that into account. We can only say, is the applicant's application in line with the existing regulations about the specific type of property? And then it's certainly up to the town to provide those services because they're legally obligated to. In the same way, if somebody had a 1-bedroom house and tore it down and built a 5-bedroom house, if we needed more fire trucks or more police or something, the town would just by law have to provide that. So we're going to look into that as part of our town plan of conservation and development, but we can't legally, as a regulatory body here, take that into account. That's something that the town must provide.
Okay, and with all this development that's been going on in the town, I mean, it's completely changed the nature of the town and the type of, the traffic through the town on a daily basis. We've all, we've all experienced that. So if, I'm trying to think how to.
We've heard that loud and clear.
Yeah.
And we've specifically are incorporating that type of capacity analysis in our next wave of plan of conservation and development, because that is something that we, as a commission, want to understand fully as well. So we hear what you're saying with regards to a macro impression and opinion that you're hearing. Okay.
And we're not just aware of the developments in the town, Corbin District, Heights, but we're also acutely aware of, let's say, the Norwalk border, where there's now a new Target, a Wegmans, there's the Stop and Shop over there, there's Costco doing that massive renovation. So we're certainly aware of where the traffic pain points are. The town just has an unfortunate geographic location between exits on 95. When it backs up, it's so easy to get to our post road to try and shave a mile or two off of 95 by ghost driving through downtown Darien, that it just clogs our arteries.
Okay, great. And one final
But
question.
we are acutely aware of that
Will
traffic.
there be a
concern.
referendum on this, or is this all in your purview that you can?
This is, planning and zoning makes a decision. Certainly, if the applicant is not pleased with the decision, they have the ability to appeal to Superior Court. Similarly, if neighbors within 100 feet can appeal to Superior Court. But the state statutes and town ordinances do not have any provision for a town referendum on any project in terms of an application like this. Certainly,
Okay, so like the Whole Foods, that went to referendum, didn't it?
Whole Foods, no.
Yeah.
There was, at one point, many, many years ago, I believe there may have been a referendum, and maybe Mr. Bigelow or Mr. Hutchinson can refresh my memory, relative to the town purchase of a property at Avalon. But Whole Foods, there was no, there was a decision by the commission.
There was no public.
On Whole Foods. That decision, which was to grant Whole Foods, was appealed by the neighbors. And
All
Whole
right.
Foods stands today. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on back up. Yeah?
If you grant me one.
Absolutely.
Afterthought.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
Do you have his, I think this
Yes,
is
I do.
So,
Mr. Freight,
once again,
I believe.
Freight.
Freight, yep.
Yeah, so.
Is it Freight Ave? Is the Freight Ave is right there, Freight Road? Is that?
Freight Court.
Freight Court, is that
Freight
your
Court.
family?
It's got something to do with
Something
my
to-
family,
right? Okay,
certainly,
just-
yeah.
all right.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to mention is I've lived on that road since before the library was built. And it was a fairly quiet road before that. And, understanding that the library is a public interest development, right? So there was a measured increase in traffic based on that, but it's for the public good. And one of the things about this application is it's clearly not for the public good, it's a private use. And so I just wanted to make that point. The other point that I wanted to make is that I think they call it Lot 9, the undeveloped portion behind Stony Brook, is really a wildlife refuge. And you wouldn't think that it was, but I'm here to tell you that it is. And so one of my concerns is that they might be able to screen that top portion while they're doing demolition and construction with some sort of a sound barrier screen. And it's unusual because there's a lot of noise comes off I-95 there, and the wildlife seems to prevail anyway. But I have a video on my phone of 9 deer walking right down through that potential curb cut to cross over to the cemetery at 6:30 at night. I've seen upwards of a dozen deer there. Last week, we had a red fox arrive on the scene. There's been turkeys. There's been
Many coyotes?
so there's the idea of cleaning it up, but also not disturbing the wildlife traffic that has coexisted with all of us for so many years. There's actually deer that travel from West Avenue under the throughway through the viaducts and travel that way. So it's an important thing that was kind of dismissed by the developer as just being a bunch of dead trees and logs and whatnot. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention anyway.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep. Would anyone else from the general public like to speak towards this application?
I got one quick
Nope.
thing that I totally forgot, and you guys can know
On
that.
back.
Yeah, it's really quick though. If there's a need for fire and safety for some sort of access off Hecker, I mean, everybody would understand that. If the crash gate's something for EMS, fire, any ambulances that need to get in, we that's just common sense. I totally forgot that at the time, but thank you guys, appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
And just for the record, that was Reese
Reese
Hutchinson.
Like Candy Bar and Hutchinson Parkway.
And just as sweet and honorary.
Great. I see Mr. Klein chomping at the bit to stand back up. Any other comments from the public? Nope. Okay, seeing none.
Great. Well, thanks to our neighbors for sticking around, and thanks to all of you. I'll be brief because I know I'm looking at the clock as others are. We are not, I think, just the comment initially about Lot 9. There is no disregard for Lot 9. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Not many property owners would say yes sir, yes ma'am when asked, will you put a conservation easement that will prohibit any sort of development activity on a significant percentage of your property. Rick Talamelli, the Environmental Protection Department, asked for that. We said there wasn't even a hesitation on the part of Trammell Crow during that conversation. There was a comment about will the result of that conservation easement put some undue burden on the EPC or the town of Darien. There's no obligation on the town. That's something that we'll have to do, and prior to getting any certificate of occupancy, before anyone can move into these buildings, we'll have to execute a conservation easement that satisfies Mr. Talamelli, satisfies Jeremy and Fred, and satisfies the town's attorneys. I think in terms of the traffic impact, and I know we have some more details to iron out, but I want to say, and just building off Mr. Freight's comments about taking into account the public impact, not just the private impact. The reason why a drive or an access drive on Hecker Avenue is a good thing is because let's pretend that we came to you with an application that did not have that. Let's go into that reality for a minute. We would have more cars coming off of Thorndale than we do right now, more of an impact on the post road, and we'd still have, I don't know if it's the same, but a darn near similar amount of cars going down Hecker Avenue. If we didn't have the Hecker Avenue curb cut, there would still be trips going down Hecker Avenue. What providing that additional access drive on curb cut allows on Hecker Ave is it allows a more, what's the safest and best way to get somewhere? The shortest distance. And it allows people who are going to go down Hecker Avenue anyway to get there in a more efficient means from our site. And what the great news is that we can do that without having an adverse impact on Hecker Avenue. There will not be a perceivable adverse impact in terms of level of service, in terms of safety for pedestrians or other car drivers on Hecker Avenue. In fact, as a result of this application, if the police commission thinks it's a good idea, we'll be able to get fog lines on Hecker Avenue that will reduce some of the speed concerns that other people raised. So in terms of the traffic impact on Hecker Avenue, this project is a good thing. If traffic is your concern, and folks brought up medical office and how does it compare to the current office, if you're concerned about traffic, you want this project, and we think you should be as excited about this project as we are. We didn't talk about it as much tonight, but some of the folks who did leave earlier said, hey, please be sure to talk about the impact on flooding. That's an important part of this project, and the folks on the EPC spent a lot of time on it. We mentioned it here too, but through the hard work of Tom Daly and Jay Williams and others, the amount of water that comes off this site is going to be less than what it would be if it was an undeveloped 11-acre park. I think that I'm not a math guy, I'm not an engineer, clearly. I think that is really cool, and certainly for a town like Darien that has had flooding challenges, that's really darn important and a really important public benefit of this project. In terms of overdevelopment, we said it before to you folks, I'll say it again for the people who are here now. This project is, whether you look at it in terms of impervious coverage, number of apartments, it is not overdeveloped, it is underdeveloped. Someone mentioned a bonus for the open space. When you provide, I think, a fraction of the amount of open space that we provided, you can build 25%, you can cover 25%, a quarter of your site with buildings. We're not doing that. We're not, as a result of the tweaks in the plan that we showed to you today, we're now under 20%, which is what's permitted as of right, something that can be done without any special review. So I respectfully, really take issue with the comment that we're underdeveloping. And in terms of, meeting the town's housing goals, when we did the zone change with you all a couple of months ago, housing, my view of housing growth in a community, responsible growth, it's affordability, but it's also diversity of choice. Darien will always be a great place for single-family neighborhoods. We've got some downtown and TOD developments now, but what we don't have is a multifamily option for people that don't want to be in the thick of it, don't want to be right on top of a bar, right next to a train station. And this will provide that at both the market rate and affordability level. And I'll close too. Mention something that we mentioned last time too. This will be the first project that will satisfy the current 14% obligation that the inclusionary zoning regs provide. Something that's a standard for other similar peer towns to meet. And we were there. I think many of you were there when the overlay zone in the DOMR was adopted. Craig was there. I was there. This was a site that was identified from the outset as the right place for this type of development. No need to worry about this. This is a terrific site, and there are a lot of public benefits that will result from this project. So I think that covers a lot of the issue. We heard a lot. I tried to distill it all into a couple of quick talking points. Happy to answer more questions. Also happy to look to
continuation.
Yes.
Do we need to request it, or does he need to request it?
Based upon the need to go to other boards, including the Architecture Review Board, we recommend the commission continue the hearing to Tuesday, November 19th, 7 p.m. We're going to be in the auditorium of Town Hall. Someone has this room booked that night.
Do we need to get an extension from the applicant?
We would need, right, which would allow the applicant to go to ARB at 7 o'clock and come to us a little after that.
So we're going to start it at 7? Or we'll
The
put it at
commission
the end?
meeting will start at 7, and when we get to this application, it might be 7, 7:15, 7:30, to be determined based on,
So do we need them to request an extension?
yeah, authorize extension time to get us to
So
that.
they're gonna go to ARB and us the same night?
They are.
When does ARB start?
They start at 7.
Those meetings have been long, yeah.
Those meetings have run really long.
Well, they're going to be first on the agenda, and there will, let me say this, they've covered a lot of ground with ARB. They've spent more, believe it or not, more time with ARB than they have with you.
I know that. I know I've watched them, and that's what I'm saying. They're gonna be able to start with them at 7 and get to us at any reasonable time.
We've done this dance in the past, and I'm confident we'll get this done.
I mean, it's not totally in your control, is my point I'm making.
That's true, but I mean it when I said collaboration. We've worked with the ARB, and I think
Okay.
they know
Okay.
there's
Okay.
good
So
faith.
you're comfortable
Do
working
we
with them?
need to have him request an extension?
Yeah, we'll put it in writing, but extension granted to the 19th.
Right.
Okay.
I guess the other choice, Jay, would be another night, but after that.
Yeah, no,
But
the 19th is better
okay
than
with your team?
anything
Roll
after.
out. Yeah.
I mean, we could hold the public hearing the following, the Thursday, if we had to.
Right, well,
The next day.
certainly you start running into Thanksgiving
Yeah,
time and
that's what I'm
things like
saying.
that. But certainly we'll have to hear from peer reviewer Greg Del Rio next time.
Exactly.
You could always start with him. we've covered a lot in terms of landscaping, stormwater, whether Mr. Canis needs to be there. The commission can make a decision
Yeah.
based on that. I think we covered that.
Yeah.
We can certainly hear, there'll be other neighbors that wish to speak.
Yes.
Yep.
I know Mr. Sullivan's got a couple things in his list.
Yep.
So your architect will be working with ARB that night
Yes.
and
Yep.
coming back with some
Yeah.
revisions.
Yeah.
But I think what you relayed to me, Jay, was a lot of the items have been addressed in some latest changes.
Yeah, and I
which
think
we've
you,
seen tonight.
yeah, you all saw tonight, there was a big change from the original, the before and the afters were quite compelling. I think where we're at, where we are with the ARB are specific issues, which is,
Here, there.
I think will condense that
Okay,
conversation.
great.
So Tuesday, yes, Mr. Free.
Sorry, can I ask, will that police hearing be happening before November 19th, or
Yeah, you know,
is there a schedule for that?
That's a great question. I don't know, I'm not sure when that meeting, or what that will look like, but, we'll be in touch with the LTA and the police commission.
And how does that work? They submit to you guys?
Yes.
The police find?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Right, when the local traffic authority, which is the police commission, makes whatever findings, report, whatever it is, it will be given to planning and zoning.
Great.
So it'll be November 19th, Tuesday. Your meeting will start at
7
7
p.m.
p.m.
in the auditorium.
In the auditorium here at
The
Town Hall.
auditorium.
2 Renshaw
So
Road.
downstairs.
Okay. We'll see y'all then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes our public hearing for the night. We're already here. Moving into the general meeting, time permitting. Do we want to deliberate on the spa? Is there any issues with the spa?
No issue.
No issue? No issue, no issue, no issue? Positive review, positive write-up. Knock that out of the park.
Gentlemen, if you wouldn't
Guys,
mind,
yeah.
guys, we're still conducting it.
Excuse me, we're still conducting business, so if you could just quietly, thank
You
you.
should know better.
Moving on to the approval of minutes for October 1st, 2024. We have in our packet the meeting from that night. Everybody here was here, including Mr. Netter, who's not here. We talked about 10 Nickerson, pretty straightforward. We heard the very beginning of this application, which we spent most of our time on. That was pretty straightforward in the write-up. I thought they covered basically everything. We talked about, we deliberated the karate dojo, and then we had a bunch of the approvals that we can't change, so I don't know. Those are just in there for, good measure. I didn't see any Scrivener's errors or typos or periods in the wrong places or Mrs. referred to as Mr., Mr. referred to as Mrs. Anybody? Any comments on this minutes?
No, good.
Amy, George?
Spelled my name right.
Everybody looks good? Motion to approve the minutes? Amy makes a motion. Jamie makes a second. All those in favor?
Thank
4-0. 8th are done. Moving on to the, if I can bring back my thing, the 16th. Meeting from the 8th, excuse me, that was the first. Sorry about that. The 8th, here, we saw the quick, please deny this while they're releasing from the BMW, which we did. That was just in a special meeting, and then we had the interview for the last remaining applicant for the POCD, which was, insightful. So now we've seen all 3 of those, so it's up to us to kind of make a decision. And then we talked about the dock, which we can't really change. And that was basically it. After the dock, we talked about, this was the car wash, which we approved with conditions as amended, which we can't change, that's in there. And that was it. So it was a pretty straightforward kind of meeting. I didn't see any typos, scrivener's errors, nothing. Anything from you, Amy?
I'm good.
George?
All good.
Jamie?
Good.
Everybody's good? Motion to approve as submitted. George
Sure.
makes the motion. Amy makes the second. All those in favor? 4-0. Done.
Okay.
Minutes are approved. Moving along. Chairman's report. I have nothing to report. Director's report. Anything?
Nothing new. Meet again next week.
Special meeting.
Special meeting next
What are we
week.
doing?
The start of the meeting would be an executive session to discuss the town plan consultants.
Okay.
Then you'll come out of executive session, presumably some vote will be taken, hopefully, which will allow us to start getting a consultant on board, whoever that may be.
Perfect.
We have 2 minor public hearings.
And that's all we're doing on the 29th?
Now, we have 2 public hearings, and
Getting there, sorry.
I don't think too much else, Fred.
What the public hearings?
There's one on 201 Long Neck Point Road, which I think is a new
Another
house
one.
going in, replacement house. And then 94 Nearwater, which is a plan the commission looked at about a year ago.
What's that?
They built the house, but they want to do an addition.
Always. Okay, November 12th, what do we got going on there?
November 12th, in fact, Fred and I were just talking about November 12th. We're going to try to have 3 or 4 relatively, hopefully uneventful public hearings, maybe even 5 if they're uneventful.
Houses?
Can get them. Yeah, there's one for driveway in the flood zone in Tokenique. One, I think, is a replacement house in Tokenique. One is a small addition to a house on Pratt Island. One is a small addition maybe to a house on near Holly Pond. One is some regrading maybe on Maywood Road. So
minor stuff.
we'll try to, and then the 19th will likely be a whole night for
These guys.
this application. And then the 26th will be, try to
Approving
get
everything.
whatever hearings we don't get to on those nights, and then try to clean up as much as we can, such to hopefully avoid the need to meet in December.
Okay.
We'll see, to be determined.
Anything else?
Yeah, we received about 7 or 8 applications for our November meetings, so we're trying to figure out where to put everything.
Everybody's jamming it in before the holidays, huh?
To try and get those cleared out before we go into December, but we'll see what we can manage.
In a worst case, I suppose we could do the first week in December as just an approval special meeting, maybe even via Zoom, where we just, no public hearing, but just churn out a bunch of these write-ups if they're all pretty straightforward, you know?
Yeah, let's see.
See how it goes.
Really, we're still literally going through the applications to see what got submitted.
Gotcha.
And who's ready and who's not quite ready, and there are many applicants that believe they're ready, but they're not quite ready.
They always think they are.
So the 19th is Thorndale only?
I would guess there might be, if there is something small to start the meeting,
Yeah.
it might be
You
something
could put
small.
another spa thing on like that, that's 5 minutes, that'd be okay.
Yeah.
I mean, do we want to start at 7, or should we deal with reality and make it 7:30 or 8?
Well, I think they could potentially have their traffic, advisor here.
Yeah,
and
Greg Del Rio
does
can
his-
talk.
Greg could, I certainly want to hear Greg
Yeah.
present his analysis.
Well, Jay will
for the
want to
benefit-
be in both places, I'm sure.
Well, we can only do one.
Oh, Jay.
Yeah.
Well, he's got his associate. That's his problem, not ours. Okay.
So we'll
Well,
see.
we clearly pointed it out.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
opted to want to.
Yeah.
Want to do it, so.
So,
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Jamie makes a motion.
Ooh.
Amy makes a second. All those in
Yeah,
favor?
quick
Oh, no,
one.
I'm not in favor. This is it.
Well,
We're
you're
not staying
outvoted.
here.
You're
No,
outvoted.
4-0.
Get my kids to bed, it's almost 10 o'clock.
Oh, yes.
Look at that. God, we're out of here by 9:45. Tell me that wasn't a good move.
Than in bed before you get.
So far, so good.
All right.